access Channel 8 and through the town website at www.eastham-ma.gov. And I want to thank everybody for coming today. And there is Mira has a check-in thing. So if anybody didn't sign in, I'd like to make sure that you have before the end of the meeting. And I appreciate all of you being here. We'll start right off with the budget review, item number 2 on the agenda. And it's the Nauset Regional High School. Do you want to join us, Brooke, or I'm not sure how you'd like to.
I would really like the whole team to join me because we all have a part in this actually.
Well,
so I'm not
I
sure.
can move.
I can move too.
No, you don't have to move. We can
Can we get some more chairs around the
let's
table?
grab some more chairs. So I'm going to start with Judy and Tom. I'll start with Judy and Tom, but to be honest with you, we'll go through the elementary budget first and then we'll go through the high school. But it's really important that we talk through the first pieces. Oh, okay. You can snuggle here. It's okay. You don't have to move that far over.
Don't want anybody to tell us.
Oh, that's
quick.
That's all right. That's all right. I'll put in-
Throw it my way.
Although I wish I was her diamonds. I want the blonde hair, that effervescent smile. You done? Can it be done?
Still time for a makeover.
Is there-
I think everybody knows Brooke, our superintendent, and maybe I'll let the rest of you introduce yourselves because
Sure.
we get to see you frequently.
Yes.
But the other folks here don't always see you as often, and
So I'm happy to introduce and go around the room. So just so everybody knows, so this is Judith Schumacher. Judy is our chair this year of our regional school committee. And she has served for years as the chair of the budget and finance committee. So she's a key numbers person for us here. Tom Fitzgibbons is sitting beside her, and Tom is the chair of this year of the budget and finance committee. So he, if you were like Mary and a couple of others, like Peter, you saw both of them very, very frequently this year. BFFs, that's correct. And Maura Noonan Carey is at the back there, and of course she is the vice chair of our region committee. Also today we have, of course, Bill Crosby, principal of Eastham Elementary School, and Ann Crozier, who is the chair of the Eastham Elementary School Committee. So you've got a whole group of us, but the reason we start with the high school component is because we did something we think is kind of big for us, and you really need to understand it before we start to work through the other budgets. So in my time here in the last couple of years, one of the things that we've done is every year we've worked to really refine our budget process, and we've worked really hard to work at our budget lines to make sure that the lines were coded properly, that the right things were in the right lines, because that's really important. Desi will come in to grab our numbers, for example, and that helps to define how much Chapter 70 money we get, what our IDEA, any of the federal monies we get, and it all is really reliant on those lines being right. So I think that the work that I did throughout the last couple of years kind of helped to lead to this evolution, which is something they had been asking for many, many years. And I'm going to turn it over to Judith in a minute to explain what that work was. But it really was some major reclassifications. And basically some things were in the region that just should never have been in the region, or they were in the region and they weren't invoiced out properly to the elementary schools. So it took a lot of planning and a lot of strategizing for us, but I think we feel really, really good at this stage of it and saying, yeah, we did a good job with this. On the other side, while that work was going on, all of our elementary schools, of course, were building their budgets. And we wanted to keep the two very distinct until the end, which is, of course, where we're at right now. So in essence, what we did was we built all of our elementary budgets once we got them to that percentage point that we were looking for, that 3 to 4%, middle school came in at 2, increase from last year is kind of when we shut it down. And we said, okay, we've hit that mark. Are we comfortable? Do we feel that we have what we need for our children? If the answer was yes, then we pushed forward. And then we did that overlay of the reclassifications. And so what you would see, for example, in the region-only budget is a negative number now when we put it up on the screen in, probably 15 minutes or 20 minutes or so. So you'll see a hole in the region, but you'll see the reclassifications on the elementary end. If you're an omnibus budget, which you are, it kind of all smushes together, to be honest with you, is where, a town like Brewster right now, where they say, hey, the region looks great. Well, of course it looks great. We just took $1 million out of it.
Took money out.
Yeah, so of course it looks great, So I give all kinds of credit to certainly our chairs who were involved, all of our leadership, people like Tom, like Maura, Judy, in our offices, and our principals, of course, our elementary chairs, because they had to understand this as well, that we were doing this through this process. And so I think Gail Briere said it best when she said, it was just at the beginning when we were saying, should we do this? Is this year the year to do it? And she said, when do you rip off the Band-Aid? I think it's time to fix. So, when I was talking to our TMs about it, they were saying this should have been done 20 or 30 years ago. But the good news is it's being done now. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Judy. She's going to explain the rationale, and again, she and Tom are here to answer any questions that you might have as well before I start into my presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, Brooke. So I don't know if you have our presentation. But-
It was given to everybody. I don't know. They may have it in paper and they may have it on their
Okay.
computer. So
The numbers that I'm going to talk about are on I think the third to the last slide, if you want to follow them along. Anyway, so is Brooke,
Do you want me to bring the presentation up on the screen, or is Arlen gonna do that?
Actually, Arlen could pull it up. Arlen, if you want
I
to.
mean, I have it right here.
Oh, okay.
okay,
Same one as Monday, right? Elementary.
No, it's a region.
Yeah, we're talking the region right now.
Fiscal year twenty
it's,
twenty-six,
it's like the third one from the end, I believe.
that one.
Keep going. No,
There.
no, that one. So we're going to be talking about those numbers down at the bottom where it says the costs that are reclassified to the region. So as you can see, what we're talking about is just over $1 million. So it was a big move. It was a big shift. These aren't little dollars. It did impact the other budgets because these expenses were reclassified to either our central office budget, which covers the administration, or to the elementary school budgets. And on all of those budgets, these things will have a definite impact. They're not going to be it's not going to be a little blip. So,
excuse me, Jude, I just want to let people know that the million you're talking about is the 732 and the 954 added together.
and the 359.
359.
Yeah, and 359, I'm sorry.
Right.
That meant the 359.
exactly right,
Yeah.
So there were expenses that, as Brooke said, have long been in what we call the region-only budget. There's the high school budget, there's the middle school budget, and then there's the region-only budget. And the region-only budget is going to take care of those things that aren't specific to a school. So it's the buses, it's the transportation, it's what we pay for charter and for choice out kids. It's what we pay for out-of-district special ed. So this is the budget. It's our biggest budget. So there were two categories of expenses in there. One category were expenses that were attributable to the central office and belonged, therefore, in the central office budget. There were other costs that were attributable to the elementary schools and therefore belonged in the elementary school budgets. Now, the ones that go in the elementary school budgets, they have nothing to do with the region. We are not an elementary region. We are not a pre-K region. We are 6 to 12. So these were two buckets, if you will, of benefits. Benefits for the pre-K staff and benefits for the OTPT, the therapists. So the salaries were in the elementary school budgets, but the benefits, for some reason, were in the region. And they were buried in the region. We couldn't even tell you until somebody dug them out how much there was in there because it was just all one big benefit line item. So one never had the true cost of what does the pre-K program cost? You don't know because $280,000 of it was buried into the region. So these are the costs that were reclassified, put into the elementary districts, and $360,000 was taken out of the region. And the region bears no responsibility for them. The other group were similar types of expenses that were again buried. And these were the benefits for, mainly the benefits for the central office staff. So central office staff salaries were in the central office budget. Their benefits were buried in the region. And that adds up to what? $560,000. So that was substantial. Again, the benefits followed the salaries. Now they're together, happily, I'm sure. The other is that there were 3 staff members. One was charged half to the high school, half to the middle school. The others that you see here, too, the 176,000, are staff of our technology department. Why they were in the region, why the one was charged to the middle school and the high school, there's no answer. But the Department of Technology is part of the central administration. They serve all 5 school districts. And so these people, their salaries, have now been moved over to the central office. So 732,000 plus whatever came out from the high school and middle school was moved over to the central office budget, making a big impact on a relatively small budget when you're moving basically $800,000 over there. The region will still pay for part of this because we pay 60% of, basically 60% of the central office budget. The other 40% is split out proportionally to the elementary schools. And that's the reclassification. It took a lot of work by a lot of people. It took a lot of, I think, taking deep breaths sometimes and persevering. And I give a lot of credit to the central office budget subcommittee because this would have been much easier not to do. I mean, this took an enormous. That's why it never got done.
Nobody wanted to tackle it.
Yeah. It's, it's not a little Band-Aid that was pulled off. And again, it makes a big impact on their elementary budgets. Nobody wants it, that to happen. But the region did it. Sure, we want $1 million out of there, but I mean, that's one reason. But we have no responsibility for that money. We have no authority over that money. And yet, there it was. And it's $1 million that's added to our per pupil cost, for which lots of calculations by the state are used, including how much tuition we pay to charter schools. And so when that number is inflated, that makes a difference, which is why Brooke has spent so much time getting the expenses throughout all of our budgets put into the proper place. Because the coding does make a difference. And so this makes a big difference. And I think everybody that's worked on it, I think everybody's breathing easier now, but I think everybody that's worked on it feels good about it. It took a long time. It seems like it should be an easy thing, but it's not.
Judy, can you refresh all our memories of, whoops,
Uh,
can you refresh all our memories on how, so you mentioned the 60-40 split between the region and the
Right.
schools. What's the basis of that allocation of the central office
Student
budget
population.
based on?
Student population, right. So
So-
it's calculated every year based on the October 1st enrollment numbers.
So a
And
portion of the central office budget that gets allocated to Eastham Elementary School is the Eastham Elementary School students compared to the total of all the students throughout
right,
the district in the region.
Right.
and
right,
Including Brewster and Orleans Elementary Schools.
right. It just takes the whole pot. And so I think this year, it varies every year, but it doesn't vary much, at least not for the region. It doesn't vary much. We're 60, I think this year we're 59.2. You know, next year we might be 59.6, but
If,
it's,
this might be too hard to discuss or answer in this meeting, but I'm just curious. Historically, if we've allocated according to the region agreement and it was based on enrollments, would that be the same allocation historically? Whereas now, I get why, especially now, you'd have to do it if you're going to use the statutory basis because it's a different way of allocating costs. But historically, would it have come out in the wash, so to speak? Except for the things you're talking about, but the per pupil costs and all that. But as far as the actual allocation to each town.
Yeah, I think it's.
oh, yes. I see yes, I don't think that this will make any difference on towns because you have a percentage of the region and you have a percentage of the central office budget. It's based on the same thing. If your population goes down,
No, I think
whatever.
it's a little bit different because you're using statutory now.
Oh, now that we're using
But
statutory,
historically,
yes.
the
Yes.
allocations were all done on the same basis.
Right,
So
yes.
even
yes.
though the pots were wrong and it has other impacts, the
Right.
total dollars to the town were what they ought to have been on that old basis.
And that's why I think when Brooke says, when you've got an omnibus budget, you won't see you add it all up, you won't see much difference at all. Excuse me.
I have a question. Are you confident that based on the review of everything that you've done, that there's nothing else in the region budget that should be out?
That's a really good question, Mary, and we're going to have to go back to the drawing board now that we've found those. I don't know.
Mhm.
I think there are a couple of more things we can look at. I don't think that they're big ticket items,
Mhm.
but I can't say for sure.
I don't think it would be like this year.
No, it
won't
wouldn't
this
even be
big, no.
close.
If I can just, one thing I did want to point out too, that Judy was alluding to, I do want to go back to central office budget because central office budget at the end of the day, I think was about just around that 5% mark for increase. And part of that was because of the new software that we're going to. But once we did this, and it's a small budget, right? It's just like a $2 to $3 million budget. As soon as we did this, instead of being, that 5%, it shot up to 47%. And it's just because of so, like Peter Lombardi and I were talking the other day, and it's almost like not the year to look at percentages. It's almost the year just to look at your dollar values and forget the percentages because they're kind of meaningless right now. So that just gives you a broad stroke overview of the reclassifications. Tom, did we miss anything? Is there anything you wanted to add? Are we good?
No, you didn't.
No, we didn't miss anything? Okay, sounds good.
Anything in the future, I don't think would be very impactful.
So with that, then I am going to bring up Mr. Crosby because we're going to start to go through the budget presentation. So are you gonna help? Okay, Arlene, I think Rich has got this. So Thank you.
can go have dinner.
Do we want to make space for Bill to come up? and
Yes,
join us?
he can join right over here, Bill, if you
Yeah.
don't mind. That would be
Get a
great.
chair.
And we'll go to the first line or the first slide if you're okay with
Want to
that. or
grab a
second
chair,
slide.
Bill? or- I can move down and.
Thank you.
Uh,
So thank you. I will stop right there. The second slide is great. If we can go
get
to that
closer.
second slide. Thank you. So this basically is just a quick review of your membership in terms of leaders. There's your Eastham School Committee over on the far left. Your the Nauset Regional School Committee, and you've got Judy Schumacher sitting here, Maura Noonan Carey, and Tom Fitzgibbons. There's your central office team on the right-hand side, and of course, Principal Crosby. And we'll go to the next slide. Thank you. I know that you've all seen this. This is just, a quick update. This is really, I think, from October 1st count, but I think your numbers are up now, Bill, from 178. I think you're up a little bit
We're
more.
at 185 right now.
Proudly at
Yeah,
185.
Number of kids move in October, November, so we're at 185.
There was one week there that they just all kind of came in at once. It was a busy week. To the next slide, please. This is just to give a broad stroke overview of the Eastham selected populations. You can see your low income students there, for example, in the yellow bar. Your students with disabilities on the far right, that's in the green. You can see that's gone up a little bit, up and down. But the truth is you're right basically exactly where the state is. The Commonwealth is about 20% in every school, and that's basically what you're showing there.
For low income, I'm sorry.
No, for students with disabilities.
Oh, okay, yeah.
To the next slide.
What about that
Oh, sorry.
high needs, Brooke?
Here we go again.
What's that?
So the high needs basically is pulling a couple of these things together. And from working, for me, working at the State Department, these are all algorithms, right, that people at the state put together. What I'm unsure of is exactly percentages, if they have different bin weightings or not. I'm not sure if they have different bin weightings. They might, but they kind of bring in, so it's kids who have more than one identification, for example, right? So, and then it just kind of totals it, yeah. We're not sure this is really a good slide to put up for anymore, because that keeps coming up. and it's tough to
60%
explain.
the kids have some need of
Right.
one of those four.
That's exactly it.
Those four categories?
Yeah.
But I think is that some of those categories also reimbursed in the calculation of our minimum spending and
That's
foundation
exactly
aid?
right. That's exactly correct. And that's
Right.
one of the reasons why that's one of the reasons why we do put it up. But sometimes it gets confusing, but you're exactly right, because whether like the low income, if you'll recall, before pre-COVID, that's what helped to decide how much money you got for free and reduced, and also helped for all kinds of other things, different grant monies, sometimes even different technology grants. So Rich is absolutely right that it's a big story at the other end.
Well, it's
in terms of
also a
it.
big calculation. Different student populations have a higher cost associated when they figure out your minimum
Mhm.
contribution from the town. So
That's exactly correct.
Does the low income, a number change every year?
Well, that's also a tough question. It really depends on how transient your community is, and in terms of move in and move outs. Again, you're pretty much exactly where the other elementary schools are too right now across NPS. You're not in any you're not out of sync with the others. One of the comments that they were making at Orleans last night is that they were surprised, some of them, when they first saw it, and said, we didn't expect that in our community, and yet that's where you are. So Bill, I'm just gonna quickly turn this over to you. This is with the reclassifications in it. So you don't have to go through every line, but just broad stroke overview, Bill.
Well, as you can tell, I mean, the personnel obviously is the largest percentage of the budget. Utilities and transportation, obviously remain stable from year to year. Running the school, textbooks, material supplies, pretty much level funded. And then special education tuition, obviously that number is a large number. And through this entire process, we have been very transparent in sharing that our special needs costs have risen over the last couple of years. And you can see that in the bottom line of the budget that was presented. So that's really where you can see those increases and things. And you have to meet the needs of kids, and that's the expense and that's the cost to do that. And then the other expenses for the total of, $4,812,000. Pretty much at this point, and I've been saying this, trying to say this and get the message out publicly, is that the level of services that are provided in the building right now are maintained, and it will continue so that we can provide the best possible experience, for the kids of Eastham.
Great, thanks, Bill, and we'll go on. Oh, sorry.
Just ask
Rachel,
Bill, a
question?
question, because I know others have this question and it always comes up, so I might as well address it while you're here.
Sure.
And you and I have had this conversation about the way you staff your school, the number of students in the class, but it also goes to the sustainability of the school over time with,
Right.
People staff coming and going, things like that. So can you
Right.
speak to that just?
Yeah, so I mean, we do have a preschool classroom in the building with 12 students in it. And then we also, which this is my 10th year at Eastham, and we've really, our enrollment has stayed stable over the years. I think when I started, it's probably like 190, 195. And we really try to maintain 2 teachers per grade level. Right now in 3rd grade, it's our largest group with 42 kids, so 21 in each class. And for Eastham, the lower cave, the outer cave too, is that's a big class. It really isn't, honestly, if you look across the state, but so reasonably keeping 2 teachers at each grade level, I think it's important. We've been able to sustain that. And the average class size is like, 14 to 15 kids per grade level, per classroom. And then we have enough staff for special education and enough para educators to support the goals and objectives for our IEPs.
And does the special education work that you do in the school prevent more expensive options like out of district?
That's a
type
great
thing?
question, Rich. We try, to provide those services as much as possible. But then there are just some students that present specific needs that we just don't have the capacity in the building to meet those needs. And so sometimes, children are sent to other programs. Brewster has a very robust program that we have a few kids there, but it's really what the child needs. And so we have to provide that. And so, yes, that's.
I think just to follow up, we try very hard to keep our kids in their
Yeah.
neighborhood schools as much as we possibly can.
Cheaper.
Yes, it's just, I think philosophically, I think it's just better to try to keep them in the
Yeah.
neighborhood schools with their friends and that kind of thing. I think, when we took a look at, the program that he's referring to in Brewster, that was because they had a cluster of children of the same, with the same types of disabilities. So it made sense for us to develop a program there. And they really were doing such a good job. And then we said, well, wait, if we've got a student over here and under the NPS umbrella of Nauset Public Schools, doesn't it make sense to send them there? And so that's what's happened. And so there are a couple of students, not a lot. We're not talking 10 or 20 or anything like that. We're talking like a handful, like just a couple of students that will come from other schools into the Brewster program. But it's a new program. It's only 3 years old. So it's a brand new program, but right now it's working very, very well. And to the point that Brewster is going to try to open a second very different type of program next year. And we'll see how that goes and
Right.
see if it's successful, then we can also take that opportunity to support that too.
Yeah, and I'm not opposed in the future really to, if something happens like happened in Brewster, to create a program here, in Eastham, to meet those children's needs right here in town. But it's very specialized folks too that are,
It is.
that are the teachers in those programs and the support staff.
And it can be difficult
Very.
to staff.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
I would think,
exactly.
especially on the Cape, I would
It
say
is.
finding the staff
Yeah.
is very difficult.
Yeah.
And in these specialized programs.
Yeah, that's
it's
what I
very
meant, yeah.
challenging, yeah.
One last question on
Sure.
on that dead horse. You and we are trying real hard to keep our cost going up from year to year to 3% or whatever. And that's what our tax levy is allowed to go up.
Right.
But special ed over the last couple of years at Eastham has gone up close to 20% a year. Is that it's probably a combination of things, but is it due to the cost of the special ed, or do we just have more kids with the expensive needs? or a little of, I mean, it seems like
Well,
it's a
and I-
huge number
Yeah.
compared to everything else.
Yeah,
that's-
but to be honest with you, it pretty much is in line with what we're seeing right across NPS too, so.
What's
yeah.
the answer? Why?
I think it's a myriad of things, and I don't want to speak for Bill, but I think it's a myriad of what you suggested, Peter. There's just, we've got some children definitely with higher needs than I've ever seen. So we're definitely seeing that. Definitely seeing, in my career, seeing more hospitalization than I've ever seen of children. And so, yeah, definitely we're seeing some really high needs kids come through the system right now. It's heartbreaking at times when you see what presents. Yeah.
Do you think that COVID had anything to do with that?
You know, I don't know that I have an answer on that. I don't even know if I would want to go down that road. I will say though, looking across the Commonwealth and the contacts I have across the Commonwealth, I think that Nauset has done an outstanding job of getting their children to be back basically where they should be. I will tell you that is not the case across the Commonwealth. There are still children out there that are really struggling that have just never come back up
I think there's
post-COVID.
an article about it in the paper just.
Oh,
the
I
other
didn't know
day.
that. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
No, I've talked to community members from other districts that are saying, well, since COVID, we haven't rebounded. And yet we have, so I think we need to celebrate that. So no real answer on that. It's, yeah.
Some answers,
Yeah.
honestly. Yeah.
So this is just another way. Thank you, Rich, for moving me right along. Oh, sorry. Yes.
You know, does Eastham reimburse Brewster for the
I was
students?
gonna
that
make
go-
that point.
Yeah.
In the budget, there is a line item that's specifics. I forget exactly what it says, but I'll point it out when we get to it if Bill isn't
Are we
here.
going through the? budget?
No,
No,
we're not going to go through
Not
that detail, but
But I can point
But
out that in
yes,
the detail.
I mean,
yes.
$260,000.
Right, and the reallocation is what we see in in the personnel line up there?
Well, you'll see it in a couple of places here, but yeah, actually, I'll point that out. So for example, and keep in mind, this is with your reallocations baked in now on the right-hand side. So that's why you see, for example, NPS central office, there's your 47% that I had alluded to earlier. So yes, these are the numbers here with the reclassifications in them. And the number that you're really looking at for Eastham Elementary is kind of in the center under FY 26, the third column down, your 4,812,862.
Yep.
Great. On to the next slide. So now we're just going to take a quick peek. Yeah, that's great. At the FY 26 preview for the region. So these are just things that the region kind of kept in mind as we were developing the region budget. You're going to have new administration in place, some new administration in place, not all, of course, but some new. The campus project should be complete by Judy got thumbs up and Tom does too. I think we'll all have a life again a little bit.
It will.
It will be done. Yeah, we're expecting it to be wrapped up on time. Implementation of the new budget, the financial software that I had alluded to earlier. We'll also be taking a look across NPS at the development of a new five-year strategic plan because ours runs out. So we'll take a look, and there's a lot of things in there that they'll probably carry forward, quite frankly. It was a great strategic plan. We'll have some increased energy savings, but we're also going to have some increased expenses. And in part, that's because at the high school, it is green. It is so green, the new project. And with that comes a little bit of additional expenses. And we're going to the region is going to look at establishing a special education stabilization fund. And you should see that on an upcoming warrant article at some point in time in the next couple of months. And that basically is to follow. We have done that now in all of our elementary schools, and that's just being very conservative and basically establishing like savings account, so to speak, so that especially for the smaller schools, when you get hit with a $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 child, and you're running on a smaller budget, it's really difficult. So it's nice when you've got that stabilization account set up. We've already used some of that in Brewster and then had to backfill it. The first year we put 100,000 into it. We had to take out 73,000 at the end of the year, but then we were able to put it right back in the next year, and it's sitting at about 160,000 right now. And I think what all the schools are looking at is trying to get to that around that 300,000 mark is kind of the sweet spot right now. The establishment also of a transportation capital reserve fund. And if you've got any questions on that, Judy's sitting right here and she can help. That basically in short, your leases are up now for NPS. And so rather than cutting that line, they've kept that line in place at a level funding. And so that too will now go into like a savings account, so to speak, called the capital reserve fund. It'll sit in there because in the next couple of years, you're going to have to buy some more buses again or lease them again. And that way you won't feel it as such an uptick in your budget because we'll have saved that money in the next couple of years. So very conservative approach. It increased a focus on communication across NPS. There's a communications committee in that the region started this year, and then we open it up and have elementary representatives from all of the elementary buildings in there as well. So they're doing some good work. I know that they had a meeting this morning as well. And then we've spoken lots about the reclassifications. We'll take a look at the next slide, which is just our enrollment trends. Nothing on here should surprise you. One of the things that we tend to look at from the region is kind of that blue section as we take a look at where students leaving us for, you see the numbers in Lighthouse Charter, Sturgis, School Choice Out, so to speak, the tech. And it kind of gives you, for us, it's something that we kind of monitor to see where are students going if they're leaving NRHS. We'll go down to the next slide for the staffing levels. So NRMS has been pretty stabilized in terms of its staff, the professional staff, the teaching staff, so to speak, in the blue lines. So that hasn't really moved all that much. We try to lose staff, if you will, rather than through cuts through natural attrition. So anytime anyone at either the middle school or the high school retires or moves or something like that, then we always sit down with the principals and say, okay, is this something you really need to backfill? At the high school, sometimes we're also looking at, even though it might be a small class, if it's an elective that we know is a really strong elective and is a legacy for the school, then we don't want to lose that. So all those kinds of things are discussed as staff leaves. At the middle school, you'll see that they have cut some paras, and that's really just as a result of students and the not as great a need for paras in some case. So that's why that line has gone down. The para line over on NRHS is pretty much status quo. To the next. We still have those mistakes there. Okay, so it's not 0.04, it's 0.4 and 0.5. Yes, we should have changed that. Our apologies for that. This just gives you an idea of some of the stuff that were asked for in this new budget, but it also shows staff reductions that both schools are looking at. So you can kind of see a little bit of that and, certainly more staff reductions wherever we felt it was feasible and practical and it made sense. To the next slide. Thank you. This is just another way to look at the budget through the pie graph. This gives you a flavor. You'll see this in a minute too. There's NRMS coming in at 2.02% increase from last year. NRHS, it was at just over 3%. There's the region only at a minus 0.58. That's where a bulk of that $1 million sits. But then you'll see the central office up around that 40, well over 40%, et cetera. So that the pie graph on the right is just another way of looking at the same kind of information. To the slide, this basically just gives you a little bit of information about the middle school profile, and really where you want to kind of hone in on is the upper right-hand corner, because that shows you the budget request. And there's your, again, at the middle school, your 2.02. And if you go down to the next slide is the high school. And that's, and by the way, that's in the new facility, that picture in the new auditorium. If you haven't been in there, it is gorgeous. There's your increase there at the 3.05. And going back down is the sheet that Judith was talking about earlier this evening, and I'm not going to review that. Again, here's just another way of looking at the same information of the 2.02, the 3.05, the minus 0.58, et cetera. Capital assets at the very bottom we haven't talked about, but that kind of always remains stable at 2.5. The next slide is basically what we call like the big sheet, and I know it's small numbers. Happy to provide you with a big sheet, but it does take up about half the table. And it just kind of gives you that total synopsis of all of the key critical lines that come into play for the high school and middle school. So that kind of gives you the key salient cost centers, et cetera. So that's what the big sheet is. And we'll go to the next.
And that was helpful because it showed the increases before the reclassification and then after. So actually you can't, the numbers are useful when you compare the percentages in the draft. versus-
Yes, thank you. Yes. And the bottom sheet, the bottom slide here is really kind of where we sit at in terms of assessments, et cetera. And I know that you've got that in your packet, so I won't go over that either. So in a nutshell, that's kind of where we sit right now. And did I miss anything for the elementary?
I'd like to thank Mary and Peter for attending all our meetings as we do budget preparation. It certainly did make it a much easier process for us to be able to explain to you what was happening and why it was happening at that particular moment in time.
Thank you. And I would also recognize too how many budget and finance committee meetings you attended too. So I know that you were very busy people there. So thank you for that.
Or not.
No, I think we always look to Mary and Peter, and if they're shaking their heads and it makes sense to them, then I think,
Yeah.
okay.
We can move on.
One question, and maybe Rich, you know, why did Eastham stay the same in the blue? Oh, I'm on the wrong.
All right.
Never mind.
That's okay.
This one?
The last page,
Yeah,
there you are.
last page. Why did Eastham stay the same in the blue, whereas the others went down?
Stay the same in the, what are you talking, what do you mean?
Do you have?
Oh, no, it's 2-4. I read it wrong. Never mind. My mistake.
All good.
That's dyslexia for Jerry's
I
part.
did have a couple points I think you might be asking, and since you're here, Brooke, I'm gonna ask you, and this will come up at various times throughout the year. Revenues for the district are down quite a bit.
They were
and I
down,
know, I know that has a lot to
12%.
do with tuitions from Provincetown and Truro. So what's the status of that and what's that look like?
So, no, actually, I think those revenues are,
They're
when
supposed
we're
to be
talking
up.
about that, is just the general revenues in general were down, right across, it doesn't, it wasn't a Nauset thing, it was just right across the Commonwealth, the revenues were down. With regards to P-Town and Truro, so we did a new agreement with them, that went into place, and we did if memory serves me right now, I can't remember. Tom, I think it was a 5-year with a 3-year mark of reevaluating. And so I believe that goes, I think that's,
18%.
it was 18% increase to begin with though, right? Is that what we did? So I think that they were very good. They realized that they'd maybe fallen a little bit behind over time. And so when I sat down and say, listen, you know, I've fallen out of sync a little bit here, they weren't really surprised. And it was, I would say, a relatively easy process, you know, to come to agreement with them.
Negotiated a window in the third year. If the costs are rising, then we can reevaluate the whole situation. And
Yeah.
Negotiate.
When's the third year? Next year?
This is the second, right?
Only the second?
This is the
I think this is the first.
This is the
year.
first year, I think, and next year is the second,
Year
yeah.
after next. We see some dramatic price or cost increases and we.
Yeah.
can-
And they were very supportive of that. Like they, in fact, I don't think it was even my suggestion. I think it was theirs, so that they didn't want to fall out of sync again, like they felt that they had, or that we felt that they had.
But the rate's gone up quite a bit, but the number of students is the other piece of that equation.
That's exactly right.
And so
That's
even though the
exactly
rate's
right.
up, there's fewer students, which
Yeah.
is some of this drop in revenue.
Yes, you're absolutely right with that. Yeah.
I had a question on that page too, the E and D, 152% increase.
So, yeah, so this year, the decision was made to put 1.7, just a little over 1.7 in, and to me, I feel like that's a little high. That's not normally a number that you like to put in. However, to be honest with you, I have been in regional districts before where we have put 1.7 million in, so it wasn't a number foreign to me. But generally, you'd like to try to keep it to lower end, like 1.1, 1.2 if you can. But this year, for a variety of reasons, we looked at it and said, we'll do the 1.7 for this year.
And no, it won't be your discussion because you'll be retired, but I'm just throwing the table since you're all here. I think that's a point of discussion for our finance committee and our administration with your new administration and your school committees. The level of E&D versus the need for stabilization funds.
Mhm.
I think there's a sense that perhaps you'd be better off retaining your E&D to use that to manage your budget as opposed to using E&D that may or may not be there in the future. And then also locking up funds and stabilization funds that don't need to be locked up if you had the flexibility. So
Couldn't agree with you more. I couldn't
I
agree
just
with
want
you.
to say, I don't think some people know what E&D stands for.
Sure.
Excess and deficiency.
Googled it. Well, that was good.
It's comparable to free cash.
Free cash.
It's free cash.
Yeah,
It has a
Same
cap
for-
on it.
For us, it's a free cash, yeah.
yeah.
Our E&D can't exceed 5% of our budget.
Right, right.
So there's a cap, there's a cap on it. And all regions have it. The single municipalities like Eastham Elementary would not be able to do this, but all regions can do it.
It's different from free cash in the respect that our free cash comes from savings or,
it's just the same. in that regard.
Conservative.
but they said they decided to make it one, we don't.
Because they
decide to
have,
make-
well, because they have it
Because we, right.
Oh. and so
from
you
savings and to the budget.
left it in.
Both last year and this, or 2 years, we had, first of all, more than 5%. So
So it was
we
too.
we would have to give that.
We'd have
back,
to give it
plus,
back.
and we have more than 5% because we earned interest.
Interest
the
interest
school
rates are
bonds.
very high.
The bonds.
School
the
bonds, yeah.
And so that is what flows in there, and then anything over 5%, we would have to give back, and then so there's that, plus what we would normally put back there.
Generate.
It's the only way we can use some of our revenues. Because if we get,
Right.
if we
So
go
get-
over, if we get more 1 year, which has happened in charter school aid than what is budgeted, we can't use that directly to offset costs in that year. It has to go back into E&D, and
Then
that's the way
cycle
we
it,
can
yeah.
use it. So if we don't, so that's how we get it back to
Right.
you, and we're able to use it and apply it to our
And we're not
expenses.
able to use it on the project.
Right.
We can't reinvest it back into the school project.
Right.
Right, yeah, the budget's set.
So I have a question. Do you look as you're working on your budgets to see what we're spending or what it's costing us per child to educate our children compared to other school systems? I went through and took the elementary budget for next year, and the number of students, I didn't know that it had gone up a little. I was using the numbers in here, 178 students. And if you divide the 178 students into the elementary budget, it comes to a little over $27,000 per child. And I did the same thing for the high school. I did the middle school and the high school together for the total, and that came to almost 32,000 per child. So is that information, to me, that's helpful for the Provincetown and the Truro contracts.
We use.
And this is not including the high school debt.
But, okay, who wants to take that? Because we go through, we respond to this on a regular basis. If I've missed something, feel free to jump in. But I don't think that that's really, I mean, that's not how the department looks at it, right? When they're figuring out their per pupil evaluation, they don't do that because there are so many other factors that are played. That's why how we code our budgets are so important, because not every line is equal, right? And so you have to really, first of all, extract out all special education stuff. And that's why when we do our numbers, you've got regular ed and special ed, right? So you can't really commingle those to come up with an.
Oh, I mean,
yeah.
obviously, some students are going to cost more than other
Right.
students, but I'm just saying in general, the total cost
Right.
comes to what the figures I've just.
If you're looking at it through that type of a lens, I'm just saying as a district, we wouldn't normally look at it like that because you're going to have different for example, different special education
Yeah,
costs right
yeah.
across the board. And I mean, for example, even at the middle school this year with the population that walked in the door in September was different than we anticipated. And how we had it set up for special education, we had to change right in the middle of September and said, okay, you know what we were ready for didn't walk in the door. We had to do a reconfiguration right on the spot. And so all that kind of thing comes into play. You know, I understand how you're looking at it, but to be honest with you, I don't know that that's necessarily always the best way of looking at it. And I'm not being critical by any
But
way.
if
I'm
you
just saying
pulled
it's
the
just the way.
special ed out of it, it
Yeah.
would be a useful number.
Yeah, I
Well,
would, yeah, we could do that.
Every year, the school district and the town have to collaborate on completing what's called an end of year report.
Mhm.
So for example, Marion, your numbers don't include the cost of benefits for elementary school teachers because that's on the town side, not, so it's similar to the region shared, but so it doesn't even include the benefits. So theoretically, your numbers would go up,
Be higher.
but it would go down for other reasons. So that end of year report includes all the proper classifications of accounts, hopefully, and it's audited and it's submitted and DESI reviews it. And there are reports that we can get off the DESI website that shows per pupil costs for all the schools in the state. And so maybe that's a conversation we could have during the year to kind of educate ourselves as to that. I can pull that together for Eastham stuff. And it does break it down by the different cohorts of students as well, so.
But I think it's a valuable exercise. I really do. Like what you've done there is a valuable exercise, but I do think that it's important to keep in mind exactly as you're saying, there's different ways, different
Mhm, yeah,
lenses that you
yeah.
look at through it. Yes.
Right.
So what is the current cost of the opt-in, opt-out students? So what do we get
School
in
choice.
for, yes, school choices versus what we pay to? when a
Oh,
student
that.
opts out? $5,000.
It's $5,000 if it's,
$5,000.
if somebody choices in, and it's $5,000 that we pay if somebody choices out, except for those students that choice out that go to virtual school. There are
confuse that even.
there are two virtual schools that are authorized by the state. And we have about 14 students going to those. And they're more like 11, 12,000.
Really? And then special, if some of
Where the, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
the kids are special ed, that's 5,500 or something. And there are different,
Yes, there's some special ed costs that you're bound to bear the cost of, both going in and going out and coming in.
Where are those schools?
The virtual schools?
Yeah.
They're online.
Oh, they're online.
Space, Mary.
I'm sorry?
They're in space.
You're in the cloud.
Yeah. What about the?
They're in the cloud.
We pay significantly more than 5 to charter schools.
Oh, absolutely. The charter schools are in the 20 and 30,000. And quite frankly, this is me speaking. Our challenge now is to, we have a stable administration. I think we have great administration, stable administration at both the middle and the high school that are now able to really get some real solid programming going, getting real traction with them. And I think our challenge now is to get these kids back.
You're also not going to be a construction zone, hopefully.
We won't be a construction zone.
Which.
And so it is a challenge. I mean, and the cost of charter school is what the cost of charter school and the cost of special ed for out of district placement kills us every year. And that is where we have to try to stem some of the bleeding.
yeah, on your chart here, it's $3 million to charters this year. And a little over 3 to special ed. Out of a $38 million budget.
That's
About 2.9 million is our cost.
Yeah,
After
2.9.
reimbursements.
After reimbursements, yeah. You get 400,000 reimbursements.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jerry, I've been watching this ever since ed reform, so this is going on over 30 years now with the charter school reimbursements. And the challenge is, just to put a little more fine point on it, maybe someday we can look at this, but it's obvious, patently obvious that there's a substantial cost to someone going out because you got to pay that assessment from the charter school, but it's very incremental decrease because one student going out, it doesn't allow you to reduce your budget or your facility costs or
Right.
all the operational costs that go along with that.
Straight out.
Can't
It's just out.
Can't replace it.
Right.
Remove it full-time equivalent teacher for one student going out. That I understand fully. You have to live with it. That's state rules and, you know, Brooke didn't do it, so we can't yell.
Well, I guess the larger point that the school committee might appreciate is that goes to, so in some sense, it makes sense to have, I can't think of the word, but, you know, nice, good programming that's going to attract students and keep students. So is it worth it to spend $30,000 to save $50,000, you know, or whatever the numbers are?
That's exactly right. And that's what I was saying earlier, when you look at this, at the high school, particularly for teachers that retire, if it's one of those legacy programs, even though it's a small running program, but it's a legacy program to Nauset, you don't want to just walk away from that.
Right,
It's history.
I'm encouraged that you're looking at the class sizes and so forth, trying to think about it, because I have friends in administration in two of the largest school districts in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And their question and talking about some of this stuff with them was, are they trying to do too much? And so, and I think you're looking at those classes and trying to think about them is encouraging to me, because you're looking to make sure, you know, we're a small district, and there's only so much you can do in a small district, but I fully appreciate that. And
Thank you.
I think that that's good. You know, on an apples to apples, you went up 6%, and that's, you know,
And that's
hard.
what the reclass.
That's, yeah, without it, you know, looking at apples that going back, that's difficult for Eastham to. I can't imagine it's not a snap for Brewster or Orleans or Wellfleet, but so I appreciate you looking at that. It's really important to try and you know, it's the largest single item in the Eastham budget,
Right.
so we have to look at that. I have one comment I want to make, which you may take as a real negative, but I just want you to know. One of the things that from the select board, we wanted to look at trying to average over 3 years the cost, so we won't get the swings with when you go to the statutory method as opposed to the other, we can't do that averaging. So I just, for the committee, you don't have to worry about it, Brooke, but for the committee, think about it when
No, that's not right.
when we
No,
look
that's-
at this.
that's
The statutory is three-year average.
We can use the 3-year
Three-year rolling
average.
Can you
average.
roll
Keep an
it,
average
you can
now.
roll it into
Yes.
statutory?
Is it only on the excess over the
I
minimum?
think it's only at the
It's-
exit.
Yes,
It's on the
it's,
excess over.
right, but a good part of it is on the,
And on the,
yeah.
do you use a 3-year a rolling average on the debt? I know that our debt is done by how much we owe on debt is based on the number of students.
I don't think the statutory method contemplates the allocation of debt. So I think that is based on a allocation of students.
And can we use a rolling average on that? I mean, if.
You could put that in the agreement.
If it's in the agreement, it's not there now.
If you look at your last sheet, that has the statutory method on it, you've got the minimum local requirement is
Which.
that
yes.
one
The
number.
last.
last
If you
sheet.
wanna- can you
Oh,
put
right
it
here,
up?
okay.
Yeah, this is
Put it
last
up.
year, so I don't have the right number in here, but you've got
I'm bringing it up in a second.
3 million, whatever it is.
Well, for Eastham, it's 2.9, the minimum local you're talking about?
Yes,
Yeah, 2.9,
and then, so that's established by the state.
Right.
right.
The percentage is applied to all the numbers under that. So when you see
Are you saying, Judy, if you're looking at the transportation rate, the amount, which is 1.7 million, is that, no, that can't be right, that's
no, that's the debt. So when you look at the amount
the
above,
20%.
the amount above chapter 70, which
Mhm.
is 2.924, when you look at the amount above reimbursement for transportation, 355, and the debt, your 20% is applied to all of those numbers to get your number of 7.9.
So Jerry, what we could do some point over the summer perhaps is been meaning to do this since last year, but I could put together a little primer on how these are calculated, some of the things. But, Judy's right. But it is on the excess. The minimum local requirement calculated by the state is based on your October 1 enrollments based on,
It changes every year. right?
and so,
Change it, that's what it
Right.
is.
That's just that first
so
piece. right?
that is a swing, a year-to-year swing. There's no averaging of that. The debt, I'm almost positive is on the participation, the 20% versus, the other towns.
Right.
But it's just that operating budget, funded through the foundation formula that's in the blue shaded areas here. That's basically
So we
the
could-
statutory method.
Theoretically, we could use the rolling average on everything else.
Yeah, well, we're trying, I mean,
Decide, yeah. Yeah. Once
the
we-
agreement
once we-
you're
right,
talking
we'll have
about.
that, well, when we're gonna look at the agreement, that was one of the reasons to,
As we started
the
this thing,
request to look at the agreement.
open this can of worms.
Be careful what you wish.
So are there any other
You said it.
questions?
Yeah, Mary,
just,
may I ask a question?
Oh, yes,
Right.
can you see I think it was Roy?
Roy, yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to go back to page 3 of the elementary school presentation.
I'm not sure what page 3 was. The operating budget, Roy?
This one, Roy?
No, the enrollment.
Yeah, the
Enrollment.
enrollment.
Enrollment number.
It's the
Oh,
third slide.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, okay. Fiscal year 24-25. The question I have is enrollment goes from grade 2 at 27 to 41 in grade 3, and then back to 27 in grade 4. What's happening there?
There was a
It's just that, yeah,
blackout.
Must have been a
We,
blackout.
we have no, we have no control over those numbers at all.
Before
Yeah,
that was.
every year is a different,
Check
is
out
a
the
different
9-month calendar.
number. So, yeah, we have no control over those numbers at all.
Have any control?
They walk in the door.
But Roy, I do have a spreadsheet that I'll share on enrollment trends for the past 10 years for all the schools in the district. But I think the way you want to look at this is you got to look from the bottom up and then shift over a box every year, right? So if you start in 22, 23 for grade 1, it's 37. The next year, grade 2 is the same 37. The next year, 25, grade 3 is 41. So basically, it's the same students, obviously there's some people come, some people go.
That's going through, right.
You have
But,
to go
um,
diagonal, exactly.
Left to right.
You had new students
From the
coming
bottom
in.
to the top, diagonally going
Right.
towards the right. Yep.
I'll make a point about the population because we keep hearing about the declining populations, but actually at Eastham Elementary, this is a short graph, but we were at 191 and now we're at 185, so that's pretty constant.
As I said, I've been here for 10 years. It's been stable
Yeah.
at that level.
And then even at the high school and middle school on this chart, which goes back to 2019, the total Nauset residents. So it doesn't account for the ones that are now leaving the district to
No,
charters and stuff, but
The total Nauset residents are those in our schools, in high school and middle school, plus the Nauset residents that go
right.
Out of
charter.
districts.
But all
Out of
not Residents that are eligible.
But I think that is his point. I think,
That's my point,
yeah,
is that in two
It hasn't
thousand
changed
nineteen, it
much.
was 1265,
Right,
and now it's 1255.
right.
yes.
So our population, I mean, we have to try to retain those kids, to your point earlier,
Right.
and make our programs more robust and try to talk them out of going to the
Right,
charter school.
they're there.
They're there
They're
though.
there.
Yeah.
Right, right.
It's a unique environment. We're in competition.
Yeah.
Most public schools, they're there, they come in, if they're in the community, but
Mhm.
here we're in competition with a number of different entities for students.
So I just want to make sure, Maura, have we missed anything? Anne, Bill, last words from any of you? Anne says no, Maura, no. Bill, anything for you?
Just that, we so appreciate the support and people must love coming to Eastham, coming into the door. So, but thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh, Mary, you've got a question?
Yeah, I have one more
Sure.
question. It's sort of related to what we're talking about, the school choice numbers. Have we ever done a survey as to why they are not attending our not elementary, the secondary?
Can I answer that? So Brooke mentioned earlier that one of the things that we're going to do this coming year is to redo our strategic plan. And starting the strategic plan, the first thing one does is to go out and get
Survey
all
of
kinds
some
of
sort.
information.
Data points.
And so I think that you'll see that early on in the year, we will be going out and surveying parents, surveying students
Mhm.
in our districts and anybody else that we can get to find out what are they looking for in schools?
Mhm.
What are they looking for
What
as
aren't they,
part of the
what aren't they
education?
getting that?
You know,
cause
what
them to
is,
go
what is
someplace else?
important to them? We have anecdotal answers, but we, you know, we need to gather enough information because you need that in order to say, if we're building our road for the next 5 years, make sure we build a road
Mhm.
that
That
everybody's
meets the
gonna
needs
want
of
to be
everybody
on.
that wants
Right,
it.
right.
Yeah.
And isn't a road that doesn't accommodate the cars of today
Mm.
or tomorrow, whatever it is.
E-
So,
EV students.
yeah, there you go, there you go. So this is something that I think will be done early on and just will hopefully give us a lot of good information to go on and to follow up on and to see how we go forward, what we continue with. Do we want to tweak? Do we want to really change something? Because the students and the parents are our consumers.
Mhm, That's
Paul.
right.
Yeah.
More to
yeah,
follow.
Yeah.
Right, right.
To Mary's point, do you, if someone opts out, do you reach out to folks to maybe do an exit interview or it may be intrusive, I don't know. When someone leaves an organization voluntarily, sometimes there's an exit interview so that you can get data points and learn.
Schools do different things, to be honest with you. I mean, for example, Wellfleet was particularly aggressive about a year ago and went after like every single child that wasn't like, that is a population that is declining, right? They're sitting right now at 78, I think, is where they're sitting right now. So that, of all of our NPS schools, that's the smallest right now. But I don't know that all of our schools do that, and I think Judy hit it right on the head. I think it gets more anecdotal. And I think as they look forward to next year, I mean, one of the things that we've been talking about is when we take a look at these various data points is more of a formalized outreach to parents. And what does that look like? And then building a report from it. So that's one thing that you will see coming up in the next couple of months to a year.
Thank you.
I have a quick question on the high school for this about 763 now. Do you anticipate a lot more next year when the school's done? And this is wishful thinking.
Yeah,
And here's real wishful thinking. Is there like an ideal capacity limit at the high school when it's complete?
905.
That's probably, that's what you
909.
usually.
905?
Yeah.
Design.
I think the school was built for 900
Right.
roughly students. And that was a number that was arbitrarily given to us by DESI.
Wasn't arbitrary.
I was gonna say,
Well-
Desi wouldn't.
Well,
say
we
it was
went
arbitrary.
back and forth on the number, but at the end of the day, after they looked at the demographics, that was the number that they come up with. Now, the school is considered, and this was in the feasibility studies, fully utilized at 85%. So the school, if we have a population of 760 or 770 is considered fully utilized. So, and that was the premise that was built. Now, the school was built and we got the funds basically, based on our 40-year educational plan, how we planned on using the building and what educational program, that we had. And that was really the selling point to getting the MSBA money.
And I think too, again, this is more of an NPS rather than just an Eastham or an Orleans or a region. And it kind of goes back to one of the first questions about COVID. I don't remember who had asked. I think maybe you had asked about the COVID. You know, you had a lot of students that went to homeschool, that went to all those kinds of means, and a lot of those children have not come back. And so we're still going to your point. I mean, yeah, we can say wishful thinking, but there are definitely students that are still in that category that just have not walked back into our door. But I would say each year we see them starting to trickle, trickle back in. And especially when it starts to get to the middle and high school, because they want that experience. And, you know, the other night, I know that they held kind of a bit of like an open house at the high school. And for new folks, new kids looking at coming in next year that weren't necessarily part of our broader population, they had 90 kids there.
Wow.
So fingers crossed, I don't know, you know, but I think I think once people walk in, if you haven't walked in there and haven't seen it, it does kind of take your breath away a little bit the first time you walk in there, because it's just so gorgeous, right? So I think that the more people start to see that and the more that they feel more acclimated to it, I think.
And talk about it
And talk,
spread
yeah,
the word and
yeah.
then more people.
I know that we're not making drastic cuts to programs that are special, like the jewelry making is still going, the pottery still goes, you know, like all those really special Nauset programs are still in play. So, and we're proud of that, and there's no chopping block right now.
Yeah, Eastham residents will see it at our town meeting on May 5th.
Right, that's right too, yes.
Right, we're having it in the auditorium.
Yeah, that's awesome, awesome. We want to thank you again for your time tonight. Much appreciated. Thank you so much. Don't hesitate to reach out if you've got additional questions. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you all very much for coming.
Of course, thank you. Thank you.
Want to another town now?
I'm off to Brewster.
Fun, fun, fun.
What's your son doing? Oh, Porter still?
I think,
Oh, it's not you.
There's two of us, I think, in town.
You weren't the head of the finance.
Regional is everything.
It's Mike Fitzgerald. Mike, okay.
Yeah, I was on the, thank you.
Rhonda.
I was on the finance
Yes,
committee
you
with
were.
them.
I recognize you from that drawing.
Yeah,
card.
yeah.
Never mind. Thanks.
Yeah.
Just goes out rent, so I don't know, I don't really understand.
Not worth asking about Mike.
Peter,
Pushed like three.
Peter, I now understand why online people can't hear you from the regional success. I don't-
Oh,
You're so far away from the microphone and you're so soft spoken.
Do everything, right? And then.
I think it was something with the microphone in that one meeting.
Was there?
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
because I was speaking right into it at one point. You still couldn't.
Yeah, this is true.
Region and central both.
It might have been my computer.
Wayne always
The same thing.
bugs me, pushes the microphone.
You're very soft spoken.
Yeah.
Oh, that was the schools.
Mary, if I could just
Yeah, go ahead.
kind of encapsulate what all this means with these budgets from the schools. So I think I put in my email, thought we were landing softly and had everything accounted for. When I left last week, I got the school district, Nauset district assessments for the middle school and the high school in the region. And it's like, it was a little bit high, but manageable. I think we were 40,000 or 60,000 short. I forget which one it was now.
Said 60.
60.
Yeah.
So I made adjustments. I know we have some flexibility in our health insurance. I cut that. We had a person recently leave in the administration department. The replacement won't be making that amount of money, so I made that adjustment to a more reasonable amount. That saved 15,000. I cut 10,000 out of Jackie's salary reserve. DPW had talked about needing 2,000 for shorebird monitoring, but we're going to build a shell fisherman because that's why we're doing it, and we'll pay it out of that. And I made a couple other little adjustments. Yeah, that got us to 60,000. We were still balanced, and that's what I had hoped it would be. When I went to pull everything together and finalize it last Friday after the last
200,000.
meeting, I thought I better verify all this stuff for the schools. And lo and behold, the worst case scenario of the elementary school ended up being $200,000 more than
200,000.
the worst case scenario. And a lot of it had to do with those reallocations.
Classification.
And so at the moment, our decision, Jackie and I, is we don't think it's prudent to make any reductions to what we've got, but certainly I don't think there's the appetite for the override. So, and we are planning likely override next year because of collective bargaining obligations. So, and we also have a hope that the biggest increase in all of this is special education costs. And so
One of these years, it's gonna
if
work in
we,
our
can-
favor.
costs might continue to increase, but hopefully the population decreases. And so, I'm sure it'll be a combination of things, but we're hoping that, through the course of this next year, that we can accommodate that 200,000 one way or another, and it won't be part of the override in the next year that we have to contemplate. I mean, I'm assuming, presuming that there would be one, but, maybe we'll have, very fruitful and collective bargaining and all kinds of other things, maybe not likely, but, someone can, we can hope, but, so we've covered up the 200,000 with a short-term rental receipts, which had previously not been budgeted for operations, but the plan is to try to recover that over the course of the next year as a one, so hopefully this will be a one-time use of that money. And that's kind of the plan.
So that doesn't have to, that doesn't, that 200,000 doesn't have to stay in the operating budget? It can just be a one-time if it comes out because it's not.
It is in
budgeted.
the operating budget, but we're hoping that some amount of it will be reduced to next year's budget because of special education participation, perhaps. And, we'll also go through our side of things, and, there's a little bit of unfairness to some of the process with the schools. But in most towns, in our town with the elementary school, when we get an assessment from the district, we're stuck with it. If that assessment's $1 million more than we have and we don't get an override, well, we got to find a way to cut $1 million out of our side of the budget, which is, very damaging, right, to the services. However, if you're not a district and you're part of a town school, it's not uncommon for the managers to go to the superintendents of that town runs, one town school in their town and say, hey, you came in $1 million high. We'll make, I'll just use an easy math. We'll make $500,000 of reductions. You got to make $500,000 of reductions. It's not all on our side when it's on the elementary school. And so when we're looking at the next year, trying to make up $200,000, if tuitions out of district placements don't decrease and we got to come up with some cuts, we'll come up with cuts, but we're not going to cut out of our side of the budget the full 200,000. Elementary school is going to have to own up, and that's a conversation we got to start with the school committee probably after town meeting, so they have that understanding too.
So I have a question. The 200,000 and the reductions that you've got in your email, is that's going to affect, could possibly affect the amount of free cash that we have left?
It will, yeah. And this is, so that's why I always say this all fits together, right? We fund our capital plan largely with free cash, which is why we budget the way we do.
Right.
Well, one of the reasons, right? So, right. So if we have less free cash, I think we still will generate enough to support and we got a couple, at least one big ticket item that I hope does not reoccur. It's the HVAC, townwide HVAC. We have so many HVAC, because all these air conditioning systems are 30, 40 years old throughout town, and they're breaking down. And we've struggled along for the last 3 years. The fire department puts in window units last summer to get through, and that's expensive on electricity costs, and it's just not efficient, and it's not right, because they got to live in that place 24/7. So, so that's taken care of this year. But the police station has similar problems, and town hall has big problems. So I'm hoping that one of those buildings, we will qualify for a grant to take care of bulk of the cost. But there's no doubt that we're going to have to come up with some money for one or parts of buildings. And library HVAC now needs some work. So, but all things being equal, what if the 550,000 that's in the capital budget for HVAC projects this year is enough, we won't need that next year, because that should last us for a while, and the maintenance programs that we fund each year should be sufficient to maintain HVAC going forward. I mean, it should never have gotten to this point, but it's, deferred maintenance over the past 30 years on buildings. So, yeah, we should still, with all these changes, should still generate enough free cash to fund the capital program.
Are there any other situations or similar to the HVAC situation where we have to deal with the 30 to 40 year issue going forward, that we don't have monies in the capital plan for those items?
Maybe a couple roofs. And obviously, DPW facility is well past its prime, so I think our plan there was to see what happens with eventual wastewater and accommodate it somehow within that process. But the point is to stay current and not have to rebuild facilities. Wellfleet rebuilt a fire, I remember the old fire station in Wellfleet was built in like 1992
Seemed that long ago.
or something like that. That lasted 30, not even 30 years.
Yeah, that's not.
And they had to rebuild a whole, the one that's there now was a whole rebuild of something that was less than 30 years old.
That's crazy.
So build it right the first time and maintain it.
Right.
And then, add on to it incrementally as you need things is a less.
Maintenance is important.
Right.
On Patty's question about free cash, I thought you were going to use the short-term rentals to
The 200, for the
cover the
200.
200, yeah.
I did.
So it's not going to come out of free cash.
No, but it reduces the amount of free cash that we'll get next year,
Okay.
which in this case, because it's short-term rentals, reduces the amount into our wastewater stabilization.
Any other questions on this $200,000 issue? I'll call it a $200,000 issue.
So Rich, when you put together the contingency for the RTE, where did that money come from?
That's free cash.
That's free cash too, yeah.
So we won't need, all things being equal, we won't need the 550 for the HVAC, we won't need the 200 for the RTE, so that's 750,000. So even if we have reductions, which I expect, because, we also absorbed some extra costs in this year's budget. We got an override that gave us 2 police officers. We pushed it, we got 4. Health insurance premiums from our health group are going up, I think it's 6.5%. I think I went up 3% because we have some room in our health insurance budget. I didn't go up but negligibly in utilities, but obviously utility costs are increasing. I'm hoping we have less consumption because we've done some energy efficiency projects. So, there's a lot to it. And I do expect that, compared to the last couple of years, that this fiscal year 26 budget will see much tighter margins on the budget than what you've seen in the past. In the past, we've returned about 3.5% of our expense budget to fund balance. I don't think it'll be 3.5% this year, probably something less.
Rich, the $200,000 that Fred is referring to, I mean, this is a question for you and Jerry. That's based on the 5%.
It is, well,
is there
it's
an
based
agreement?
on what we have available.
Well, I guess my point being is the select board going to go with 5%? They're going to go with 20%? I mean, how do we,
They haven't voted on it
I
yet.
know, but how do you?
Well, I think the approach might be, and so we would need 0% or some very small amount if we got everybody signed up and we didn't have to
Right.
do refunds.
I understand.
So that's the push. And so on Monday to the select board, we're going to do an update as to what the RTE application communications plan is and application process, because we want to get as many people signed up as possible. And if we got everybody signed up, we wouldn't need it at all. So I think that'll be part of their determination. If the estimate is we got 2,500 potential residents that would receive this, and we get to the classification hearing meeting in September, and we've got 2,500 people signed up, then they don't have that concern as much. If we got 1,000 people signed up, I'll have to redo that slide, but that means $200,000 covers X amount of applicants. So I think that's probably going to be part of the equation.
Now, can I ask a question? If somebody doesn't want to apply for it and they're eligible, they don't get the discount,
Nope.
right?
They get an increase.
Their taxes go up and maybe they're just like, I'm really generous. I just want to pay the extra.
Yeah, I don't know. That doesn't seem like a thing.
Or I know, or I can't be bothered going to apply. I don't want, it's not worth it filling
Yeah,
out the
but when they
application.
get the bill with the higher taxes, they'll come in and.
Maybe they
and
don't.
say,
they
"I'm
don't get
After
it.
they get the
Fantastic.
and plus the higher taxes, 3%.
I know, they get the, What's,
Yeah.
Everything increases.
what did, do towns get 100% or I thought Jackie said P-Town, not everybody applied. They just pay the extra. Didn't
Yeah,
Jackie say
it
that?
was not all the way up.
Well, the experience is,
What was it?
um, in every town that I polled,
You had a
for-
40%.
except for one, which we won't talk about, but, basically the best any town had done in getting 100%, what the second or third year 100% number looked like. The first year, they got 60% of the second or the third year. And after the second or the third year, it's very rote and routine after that. There's not-
So they have to apply every year.
Every year.
Yes.
And
But
this-
once you've applied, the assessor has the information and we automate the process. So it automatically will go out to you, assuming in the outreach has anything changed? And if the answer is no, then we've already got everything. We don't need to, go through a deep process every year.
So in theory, you go 65% the first year, then you should be 100 from there on,
Right.
theory.
So 60, probably 95, then 100.
Okay. So
There
this,
always will be some small amount.
so this initial bang in the first year will continue to a certain extent in the second year.
Very minimally is the
Yeah.
experience.
Good, yeah.
It could.
The one caveat I have to this, and I just want to be upfront with everybody. Other than Somerville and Boston, and some of the big cities, but they've done them years ago. Barnstable is a big town, over probably 60,000 residents now, but they did it. I'm getting old, so maybe 30 years ago now. Everybody else that's done it are small towns. Martha's Vineyard, Truro, P-Town, Wellfleet. Wellfleet is the biggest of those three. And they had, I think less than 1,000 potential residents, or 1,200, something like that. We're 2,500 estimated. So it's a bigger lift. It's more work for us. So it has more risk associated with that, I would think, but.
To eliminate a surprise, if you knew today the number was going to be 20%, so this is going to be an $800,000 hit, how would you handle that now? Override?
No, it'd be too late. So,
Yeah,
I gotta
our
exercise
town meeting
my,
is May 5th.
my influence and work with the select board to make sure that they make a solid decision that, I would try to work at the direction of the select board, and if this is something they're inclined or want to do, I'll work to further that agenda. But at the same time, I've got to give them the information of what the impacts of these things are, right?
Right.
And just make sure they make the right decision. There's nothing, theoretically, you could do a 1% RTE, at least gets you started, right?
Right.
And then maybe maybe not a 1%, because you might not have people bother at 1%.
Right.
2.5 or something, somewhere between.
But at least you get the program started, and maybe the second year, instead of a 60% participation, you're up to 80 or 90,
And then you could go
then you
up.
could do,
So Rich, just a question. If the configuration of the select board were to change, is this something that's voted on annually?
it is at the tax
So
classification.
this could be something that's voted on this year, and then if we,
Voted against next year.
yes, so this could be really interesting.
Practically speaking, it's very difficult to actually happen, though, because
Because then you have to, let's say, for example, that every the median tax bill drops $300. If we vote, if the select board, I'm up for election, so who knows who will be on it, but if the select board votes, they put it in and get $300, and then next year, the select board says, well, let's not put it in.
Yeah.
That means for every resident, it's an automatic $300 tax increase plus whatever the increase is on the budget. So you get to a point where, well, I voted against it and still am against it on the select board, but once it's in, even for me, someone who doesn't like it, for lots of reasons, you really can't, I can't hit the residents with a 2x4 in the face by getting rid of it. So I think, and I think that sits with most people on the select board at the moment. Of course, could have 2 new people on it next year. But you still have, So that's the issue. I think once it's in, it's in. The hurt to the residents, if to pull it back becomes, too harsh. I mean, you just then don't, you can decide not to increase that percentage and just keep it where it is, but to pull it back would be difficult. That doesn't mean they can't do it, but it would be difficult.
State law requires you to vote every year, the select board.
That's what I
Yes.
understand. That's what
Yeah.
I understand.
One of 4 statutory options that the select board votes on every year at this classification hearing.
So technically they could pull it back.
Technically, we could, but.
Okay, but it hasn't happened anywhere.
Right, and
And
I
it'd
think for
be
that practical
politically,
reason, Pete, I mean, it just,
Disaster, yeah.
yeah. that's
The
right, that's
the
right.
ramifications of doing it are,
Yeah, I
large.
give you a tax cut and then the next year I hit
Hey.
you and hit you again and.
A lot of crazy stuff going on.
Automatic, let's just say it was 50-50, you would automate, the non-residents would get a $300 tax deduction the next, if you pulled it off, and then the stuff would go up. That would just,
It'd be a-
look, I wouldn't, I'm opposed to it, but I wouldn't want that situation at all. So you can, so if you vote for me and it goes in, I won't vote.
Don't
to get rid
expect
of
you
it.
to vote no next year. Alright.
Oh, my goodness. Whiplash.
Yeah, yes, whiplash. That's a good example.
So I hope everybody got the email from earlier today. There's a nice draft warrant in there, and Mary, the warrant is pretty much complete. So I don't know if you want to talk about any of those articles, but the only thing that's not is the select board has some work to do on 6A, which is a special legislation for a transfer tax. We need to finish and write a summary for 9A. But other than that, it's largely complete. So if you'd like to talk about any of those items or vote on any of those,
Found a typo. Who do we give a typo
you
to?
tell me.
Yeah, I have a
Did you
bunch
see
of
the-
typos.
Page 6 typo summary. It said July 1st, 2025 to June 30th, 2025.
what,
On the
where
wall.
are you?
I took messy notes. Hold on a sec.
What article are you?
Article 2B.
Page
I think it's
6.
page 5.
It's Water Enterprise
Under-
Fund Operating. Yeah.
That summary, you see how it says
Top.
July 1st, 2025 and
Oh,
ending
yes,
June
June
30th,
20 should be
2025. That should be
2026.
2026.
Yeah.
See right under the
Got it.
Water Enterprise.
Right, under it's on the summary.
Yeah.
I have found that.
There was
too.
also some language you lifted from the other towns. Oh, that you lifted from the other towns that was still in there? Like
Might have
Provincetown and I forget Orleans, I think it was.
Yeah, one of them was the petitioned
Right.
article, and once it's we can't change it, even if they got the wrong.
Are you talking about the audit?
No, well, no,
No,
that was in the fertilizer one.
And that's not in here
So the
anymore.
fertilizer
It's
article
gone.
has been removed and the
Right, right.
6B.
Provincetown reference was in the,
Yeah, but it's
Article 9.
removed. It's moot.
Might have been.
The fertilizer has been removed.
okay.
Thank you.
And 6B
I was going to stop using.
was removed.
So 6B is out.
That was the RTE for year-round rentals, so. So kind of the decision, and I guess this is good for me to inform the committee about, is when we met with the select board, there's a number of things with financial impacts. This RTE for year-round rentals is one, implementing the provisions of the HERO Act, which increases exemptions. And Mary's CPC committee is a proponent of low-income exemption. So at least those 3, and then there's some other things that we can look at. So probably over the summer at some point, I'll get together with Colleen and do a presentation to the select board of some potential options for consideration for the future. And they'll kind of look at those as kind of a package of things that they may or may not want to do. And then we'll go back to all the committees and talk to them about it
You're talking about next year.
for next year.
Yeah, right. And just so everybody understands, the CPA thing that Rich is discussing is that the committee did vote on putting in place a 3% exemption for a set number of people, low-income types of people. And it was voted 8-1 by the committee. But because after that, and that was voted, I'd say in end of November time period. And then the RTE was voted on in January, February. And so they felt that it would be too difficult to put both of those plans in place at the same time. I would like to see it in place, but management is saying that they feel that it would be too difficult to be processing claims or requests for both projects at
Yeah,
the
the,
same time.
You know, not to say it's not a good idea. Matter of fact, I think it's probably a good idea, Mayor, but just, 2,500 RTE applications in 6 months or whatever it's going to be is a massive undertaking, and all the outreach. And we're not adding staff to do it. And so people need to know that. That's 200,000 is just for the overlay for refunds that people that don't apply. We've shifted Mira's responsibilities around a little bit, so she's helping out in the assessor's office now. And so we're going to, accommodate all this
From farmer's market to,
as best we can
Do it all.
without increasing costs
Yep,
to the budget.
yep. And
So-
that's why you're kicking the can down. the
So
road.
all these other things, not that they don't have merit and aren't good ideas, but
don't have the
just to
staff
add
to
it
do it.
on all at once is tough. And
So do we use the same criteria for any program in terms of determining eligibility from an income perspective? So if we have,
the RTE has
sewer
nothing to do
installed
with
or water
income.
installed that we provide some monies for? So if you
Water-
qualify for one
For
program,
low income
Right.
qualification.
so they wouldn't have to have a vetting process for each and every one.
well, I think each process probably has its own application.
Yeah.
But Colleen our assessor is really good about if she identifies somebody that qualifies for, say, a low income exemption or an elderly exemption, to make sure that they're taking advantage of all the other things that they're
Right.
Yeah.
able to do, and we'll facilitate helping those people fill out all the appropriate
I'm just saying
things.
if we had not standardized, but
nice.
some would have a kind of a baseline that you work from.
Some are different. I know the one that CPC voted on it that we're pushing to the next year had low income could qualify to
Mhm.
not have to pay the 3%, but middle to low income seniors could qualify for the 3% exemption. So that would, the program itself has a different criteria if you're
Well, that's a good
old
ex-
like I am.
It's a good example of, the assessing office will get people that are every year it's pretty routine of the people that apply for the elderly exemptions.
Right.
If that were to come in and they saw that, they would automatically talk to them about the CPA exemption if we had it. You're not gonna send you off, go somewhere else and fill it. No, we'll do all that for you at the window.
Thank you.
Mary, would you guys like me to discuss just briefly for 6A and what we're thinking on, so you know what's happening there? I mean, what kind of things that might come about? 6A is the asking for a
Transfer fee.
the real estate tax transfer fee and asking the legislature to give us a grant Eastham the opportunity to do that. And I think a lot of towns are doing it, and the state will come up with some program, whatever it is. So this is just getting the idea forward. So what are we going to ask for? Now, initially, the transfer fee was in the state budget and it was pulled out at the last minute.
Last year. Yeah.
Last year.
And it was for properties, it was for over $1 million. And it was up to a 3% transfer tax fee. And that would be if you sold the home for $1,001, you would pay 3% on $1. So that's how it's not, it doesn't go all the way back.
It's not the
from
whole
that point
thing.
up. It's from that, from
It's
$1
not a
million
cliff.
up. And what you see is 1% and for exceeding $1 million is what we have in here now. There is discussion of whether to have it 1% and go to zero, any sale. So if you sold something for $1, you would have to pay it, or do we do it a 0.5%, or do we try and keep it 1 million, but ask them to allow us to go up to 3% and so forth? Those are things
Different options.
that are options that we're gonna talk about on Monday, and hopefully the select board will vote on our recommendations on all of the warrant articles on Monday. We hope so, so I don't have to come to another meeting the next week, but whatever the case. So that's.
We're nice people here.
No, not necessarily yours, but the select board, they're, you're not gotta worry about the select board, right? But no, they're all great. That's one of the great things about, it's one of the great things about Eastham. We can disagree and we end up laughing and we work together. It's just compared to some other towns you read about in the press. So that's where the discussion is on that, and I think we'll probably what's written, if you were a betting person, that might be what it's gonna stay, but there may be some number changes.
So,
Jerry, I would think somebody has to have done some historical run through to see what kind of dollars those turns into.
Yeah,
Is
I
it
did, yeah.
meaningful? Is
I
it?
did the last 2 years and got the
Rich,
data.
Rich has
Okay.
given it to us.
I actually
That's
meant
why I
to
would think-
email it out to the select board today, because I finally got around to catching up, but either tonight or tomorrow, I'll email it to everybody, just the stats for the last 2 years and what that translates into. So.
Okay.
but bottom line is, you guys are gonna decide on these numbers. and then-
We'll
so
vote on, so you guys
we don't have
probably
anything.
will have to, at some point,
Well, at some point, we'll
have
have to
another
vote on it.
recommendation on it's on
Right.
6A. I mean,
Okay.
I get, tonight,
So it's not final. It could
Not
be-
ready to roll yet.
Not ready to
Right.
be voted
6A
on.
is not ready to roll.
Not
The
for
rest
us.
of them are ready to roll as
Yeah.
far as I.
And so when would the legislature give us our blessing?
Well, a
Oh,
couple
will
years.
they? Who knows? whether
If they
would.
did.
If they
when-
did.
When do you think?
It's a couple year process.
Yeah, I would
Really?
think a couple of years. Yeah, even though it was in there and they knocked it out, but other towns are doing the same thing.
Nantucket has it
Yeah.
in place.
Yeah, but other towns are asking for that authority and their numbers might not be the same as what we'll put in, it's gotta be careful what you ask for. Whatever we're gonna get back is probably not what we're gonna recommend,
Really?
what we will ask for,
They'll
but
change it?
we'll get, it's
I think the
theirs.
likely outcome is you have several towns that have already submitted these petitions and they're stuck in committee. And once the legislative session ends, it's a 2-year cycle, you got to refile it. And so,
Oh, dear.
so there's, several towns, none of these special legislations for any individual town has actually passed. They're all stuck in committee through the legislature. So, but as Jerry indicated, it was part of the affordable housing bill, then got dropped at the last minute. So there's some lobbying activity going on. But I think the whole point of it, and Senator Sear has been advocating through across the Cape, for all the towns to do this legislation, it sends a message that, hey, you've got 8 of these special legislations saying the same thing pending in the legislature, all sitting in committee. Maybe we ought to just pass a bill.
So I just have a question. You very kindly said that you're going to be putting some numbers together for us. So on what different percentages or?
No, just 2. I'm going to do it on 1% on everything
Mhm.
and 1% over $1 million.
Okay,
And I'm going to do it at 0.5% on everything and probably not 0.5% of over $1 million.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll do 0.5% over $1 million for the last 2 years.
okay, last 2 years.
That's the
Okay.
number you have in there.
A million, up over 1 million and 1% is what's in the.
So what you said is you're going to give 1% on everything, essentially, or 1% only on the amount over $1 million.
Right.
And 0.5% on everything, or 0.5% on everything over $1 million.
Right.
Half the number.
Hmm?
Wouldn't it just be half the number?
Yeah.
Probably be happy. Once you get the 1, you can.
You can do the math.
It's straight line, it's straight line, I think.
Okay. And this is going to be on the agenda for the select board meeting next Monday, which is a joint meeting with us.
To start, it's a joint meeting it's the
Budget.
public hearing on the budget.
Mhm.
And then I guess you would then adjourn and then you'd go to the rest of the select board meeting where we will discuss this. So if you willing to sit through double of that, you can, you're more than welcome.
Yeah.
And 20 non-resident taxpayers complaining.
Yes.
So Mary, if you,
Any
I'm
questions,
gonna
any
join.
questions from the Zoomers?
No,
Mary, do you want to take any votes on any of these?
Yeah, let's try to push through some of them. Let's do, you call it the easy ones, Rich.
Let's just
Well,
go.
let me
Start at the
say
beginning.
One more thing, the select board appreciates seeing, what did the finance committee say on these things?
Yeah.
I mean, if you have, for example, a 5-4 vote, it makes us think, okay,
Why?
what's the issue? Why do we have this? You know, you know, there's can always be a 1. I mean, I was Dr. No on the finance
Dr.
committee, so
No.
I know. But you can, it really helps. So I would hope you can go through as many of these as possible that you can vote on. You can't do 6A because it's our fault.
All right.
What did everybody think of number one?
Number
Start at
one.
number one, Mary.
Okay.
I think number 1.
Let's make a motion, Peter.
I'd like to move we vote to recommend Article 1 as written.
Second.
How should we,
I think we're voting, right?
yeah,
Individually.
we are voting, yeah, I'm just,
Do you want to take them in chunks the way we do a town meeting?
No?
No,
no, I think we better
There aren't
do
that many.
separately.
one at a time.
I guess I can just write down on the, I have a copy of the warrant here. Okay, so you have made a motion to approve Article 1,
Yep, to recommend Article 1.
right, and then,
Fred has seconded.
Fred
do I have a
seconded.
second?
Fred
Fred
second.
seconded.
I'm sorry, Fred?
Yep.
Is there any discussion on Article 1, authorization and spending limits for revolving accounts? All in favor of approving Article 1? 1, 2, 3, Roy is 4, Paul is 5, Ron 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. Finance Committee recommendation on this article is 9-0.
Mary, I'm going to suggest we skip 2A for the time being and
Yep,
go
yep, I agree.
to 2B,
Yep,
the water enterprise.
yep. 2B. 2B or not to be?
That is the question.
That's right. Oh,
Peter, you got a motion again?
I'd like to move that we vote to recommend Article 2B as printed in the warrant with the correction of the date, June 30th, 26 in the summary.
I can second that.
That's Kate. Peter first, Kate second. Is there any discussion on Article 2B, Water Enterprise Fund Operating Budget? All in favor of approving Article 2B? 1, 2, 3, Roy 4, Paul 5, Ron 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. Finance Committee recommendation for Article 2B is 9-0.
3A is our capital improvement plan. It's non-binding. It doesn't authorize any spending, but it's just acknowledgement that the plan is there. I guess one little wrinkle to adopting this is in our charter. If something isn't in this 5-year plan and we propose it to be in the capital budget next year, it would require is it a 4/5 or a 9/10 vote? I forget which one.
I think 4/5.
So that's why, having this as accurate as possible is important. But so 3A is just an acknowledgement of the 5-year plan.
Yeah, I'm just looking, Rich, at the summary. It says Article 3A through 3B. So is there
Insert 3B.
an
isn't it?
insert? I'm looking to see if there's,
3B is the capital budget.
no, is there,
What they're actually planning to spend.
That's the capital budget.
So I should say capital improvement plan and capital budget of the town.
Yeah. That's,
capital improvement plan and, I'm sorry, and
Capital budget.
capital budget.
Why do we even get mentioned 3B in the summary of 3A? Why don't we just leave 3A?
Well, because the first column that says FY26 is the capital budget. So it just fits, I guess, in my mind. That's why we wrote it that way.
Keep rolling.
Yeah, can't really do that. The other thing, I screw it up and it gets locked and
But this is an acknowledgement,
So
it's not
I'm-
approving
yeah.
it, right?
Doesn't approve anything.
Right, okay.
Well, the 3B does, right?
3B is, yeah.
But the separate vote, though.
I'm confused.
It's here, it's sideways.
Is there,
The three, yeah, the capital plan's not, well, not in the one I have.
Oh,
But
oh.
we've seen it before. I mean,
It's in what I sent today.
was it today?
It's
Yeah.
in the.
Is the latest.
It's in the latest one.
It's in this one.
Yeah.
I sent an email.
It's
The
in
latest one.
No, but it's in the email. Did you print out?
oh, yes, thanks, Fred.
So,
Yes, I do have it.
would it work? We just said in the summary, Article 3A presents a 5-year capital improvement plan, even though.
That's what you really want to say. I
even
can
though
say
you
that.
have it in- Well, you don't, then you have to add that language. And then 3B summary explains 3B. No?
All right, let me just strike, just gonna say Article 3A presents the 5-year capital improvement plan.
Yeah, because because you have 6 years, so FY 26 is
The first column
just the
is-
base.
But this column is.
That's the base. And then the rest of the 5 years one.
I also have to make a change. There's no 3C, so at the end of that summary, I gotta strike 3C.
Oh,
Oh, wait, was there 3C? No, there's no 3C.
There's no, I don't think there is a.
so just a period after approval and. Agree with that.
Like, in addition, the last sentence I'm striking.
Oh,
So in addition, certain items, blah, 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 right?
Right.
Blah, blah,
blah, blah, blah.
blah, blah, blah.
It's like the Peanuts cartoons.
So just forget all that. Oh, that's good. I like
It
that.
ends with meeting to receive funding.
Perfect. I move for approval of the Article 3A as printed with the corrections we've just made to the summary.
Could you go over those corrections, please?
Yeah, in the beginning of the summary, it'll say Article 3A presents the 5-year capital improvement plan.
Okay,
And then the last sentence of the summary is deleted in its entirety.
and the last sentence starts
Starts with in addition,
It goes blah, blah, blah.
and the whole blah, blah, blah.
I'm sorry, starts with what?
In addition,
Very last sentence,
Oh,
Mary, in
last sentence.
addition, certain
One last
items in the
sentence, Mary.
capital improvement plan may require separate approval dash.
Oh, I
this-
see it. I'm sorry.
That last sentence.
Okay,
so those are the corrections, so it's moved.
Farmers market.
and the title at the top is just going to be
Article 3A.
a 5-year capital improvement plan
Yep.
and no and capital budget.
Nope.
Right.
No,
Oh,
at the very
at the
top.
very
he's
top,
right.
it says and capital. budget.
And capital budget, right?
You need that? What is that doing there?
So that's the,
Is that
for
what we're-
3. So
That's just-
3,
So it's just going to
Oh.
be,
it's a section.
it's going to be 3 because we're not having a B, so it's just 3.
We are having.
We're having a
Yes,
B.
we're having a B.
we're
just-
having a
What Peter's referring to is the blue box. It's references this section, which is capital plan and capital budget.
Okay,
So it's section 3, whatever.
so Peter, can you make your motion again?
Sure, I move that we recommend the Article 3A as printed and with the modifications that we've just reviewed and gone over to the summary.
Oh, I'm sorry. So you're making the motion, Peter's making the motion. Is there a second?
I'll
on
second
the
it.
Article 3A.
Roy seconded.
I'm sorry, who?
Roy.
Oh, Roy,
Roy?
any discussion? Does everybody have the changes? All in favor of Article 3A? Fred, 1, Steve, Kate, 4, Roy, 5, Ron, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9-0. Finance Committee recommendation is 9-0.
Article 3B is the actual capital budget, which is the chart of all the items. Largely, these are the annual recurring funding programs for facilities maintenance, equipment replacement, and vehicle replacement. Just a couple of non-recurring programs, the biggest one being the very first one, A. A.
You see.
Okay, that's on page 10, right?
8, 9, it's 8, 9, and 10.
Yes, but the summary.
And the
is-
summary is
It's-
on page 11.
Oh, I thought it was on
Okay.
10.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Get up.
You're correct. 10.
It's on 10.
Yeah, 10. Are correct. So we are now discussing Article 3B. Where is
I'll move that we recommend Article 3B as printed in the warrant, in the draft warrant.
Is there any discussion on Article 3B as printed in the warrant?
I'll second it,
Need a second, yeah.
Peter,
and I can second it.
Kate?
Yep.
Any further discussion on Article 3B as printed? All in favor? Fred, Steve, Kate, Roy, Paul, Ron, Patty, Mary, 9-0. Finance Committee recommendation for 9B is 9-0.
3B.
3, oh, what did I say? No, I to say not.
It's
okay, Mary,
You got it.
following.
3B.
Keep going.
So,
This is 3B.
4A is other budget appropriations,
Yeah,
and there's a list. I think we would welcome a motion on the table, but if you want to pull any one of these items out, you're welcome to do that and recommend them separately.
So the wastewater stabilization fund is less, did we reduce it this year or?
It would be for next year's reduction. Yeah.
this is,
I have a question, Rich. You're calling the Resident Taxpayer Assistance Fund. That's what you're calling that, the community fund. That's what you're calling this?
Yeah, the official name through the legislation is the Resident
Oh,
Taxpayer Assistance
okay.
Fund.
That's what I wanted to know.
In
Okay.
the summary, I listed, I think, said formerly known as or something like that.
And this is where, for everybody, if you look in item K, this is the one-time addition to the overlay for the RTE implementation of the 200,000.
For the people that
For-
don't
for the
sign up
people
until the
that don't-
last minute.
Don't
or
come in
until
on
the-
time, so to speak.
so you have that as K?
5%.
I have
Based
that
on
as
5%,
K.
Right.
So I have an old one. I wonder which one's the new one.
I
I just printed
What-
this.
what
this
did you
morning.
write? Yeah,
did,
I didn't want to go over the whole thing.
I did add, I think I've mentioned this,
Is
on grant matching funds of
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
25,000, because we know we have a grant coming up that we're gonna have to match, so.
Okay.
what is that grant for, Rich?
Community development grant,
City Development.
So we don't have to match all the grants, right?
no,
Just there's very few that we have to match.
yes.
Rich, the 250 to fund housing programs,
Yes.
how's that different from all the other housing funding? Doesn't have to be restricted to income?
Right, so CPA funded housing trust funding programs are restricted to 100% AMI. This is unrestricted, allows us to do, lower, lowercase a, workforce housing.
Yeah, okay.
What could this be used? It could be used for anything, not anything, but a number of things. Probably, we are just letting contracts now for a lease to locals program.
Mm.
This likely would fund the continuation of that. It'd also be probably likely used for our ADU subsidy program that's being in development, and perhaps a deed restriction buyback program
For year round,
or year-round deed restrictions.
not income
Right.
related. Okay. Yep. Well, I'd like-
Go ahead, Peter.
I just may as well move it.
I have a question on the item K, the RTE. If the select board changes their minds on this with the percentage, I think we talked about it earlier.
They change their mind and there's no RTE, then there's no need for the money, and it will be closed out to the general fund.
Okay. And that is going to be determined in August,
Probably September.
September, okay.
Typically it is August, but we want to push out that hearing date as long as possible to get as many applications in.
Oh, you're saying September, okay.
Did Peter make a motion on the table?
I'm gonna
Article
I'll
4.
move 4A as printed in the draft warrant.
Second.
See 10, 11,
Patty second.
10, 11, 12, Article 4A. I'm sorry, that's Peter and that's Patty. Is there any discussion on Article 4A? All in favor of Article 4A? Fred, Steve, Kate, 3, Roy, 4, 5, Ron, 6, I'm sorry, 6, 7, 8, Mary, 9. Finance Committee recommendation for Article 4A is 9-0.
Dissent in this group.
Now,
4B,
4B is the prudent.
the prudent investment
Yeah.
rule. The only change maybe, unless Paul had mentioned to me in the creation of his of the draft Finance Committee letter that perhaps he wanted to clarify what some of those investments might be, so I could add to the summary probably at the end. This may include fixed income securities, fixed income.
Repos, I saw it somewhere, right? Repurchase agreement?
No.
You're not gonna,
Treasuries.
yeah, you're not gonna
Treasuries.
do repos.
No, treasuries, fixed income securities, and conservative equity investments. Something along those lines. Does that fit what you were thinking, Paul?
It absolutely does. And I forget, Rich, implicit or explicit, you're hiring an outside manager, right?
Exactly, right.
Okay.
And is there a cost to that?
Yeah. They usually, well, it's usually based on performance. So be certain, just because I've done this for a lot of places, I deal with a lot of investment managers. Our case, we'll probably get like a 30 basis point coming off of income generated.
So Richard, just again, you are going to add to the summary at the end, the types of investment funds, trust funds that we can
Examples.
utilize or what's that?
Example of what
Yeah.
would be considered.
Right, yeah, okay.
Just so if people give a flavor, we're not talking about investing in, high tech, high volatile stocks, things like that.
Yeah.
I have a question in the summary, in the middle of it, under current state law. Investments of trust funds is limited to a legal list of investments which significantly limits the bonds and equities available for investment and increases diversification and other risks. So diversification isn't a risk. Something's
Lack of diversification is a risk. So diversification risk is you have just a handful of securities you can select from. If you're inclined to invest in equities and securities like that, and you only have a handful to pick from, you might be
so it would increase, it wouldn't increase diversification, it would increase concentration. Seems like something's backwards there.
Maybe I just need to add the word twice: diversification risk and other risks.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, diversification. Oh, I see.
Diversification.
Where is that in the summary here?
Yeah.
Where are you?
Right, middle of it.
I'm looking
It's the
for-
9th line down.
under current state law.
Yeah,
Yes,
keep
under
that
current
sentence.
state law.
Investment of trust funds is limited to a legal list
Yeah, keep
of,
going.
of investments which significantly limits the bonds and equities available.
Increases diversification
Risk.
risk and other risks.
Oh,
adding the word
and
risk.
increases diversification risks, risk and other risks.
Mhm.
Okay, you're just adding the word risk
Yeah.
after the word diversification.
So I'll move. Finance Committee recommends Article 4B is printed in the draft warrant with the added sentence at the end of the summary and the one addition of the word risk.
And Mary, I'll second it.
Paul? Any discussion on Article 4B, prudent investment rule? All in favor? Paul, Paul, Roy, Ron, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. You see, select board.
Moving along, 4C,
See,
adopting a wastewater enterprise fund. We don't have wastewater, but there's no time like the present to get ready. We have a successful application to the SRF or potentially the USDA. It's a requirement of each of those funding agencies that we establish one, so we might as well establish it and be ready. And avoid that question from them. Since we don't have any activity, it won't be active, but we'll have the opportunity, once it is, we will have it.
with the adoption of an enterprise fund.
Just a minute, I'm still, I've got my pages all screwed up. 12, 13.
It's page 13 at the top.
So the finance committee was, for that, for B was at the top of page 13. 90. Okay, so now we're on 4C.
Or C,
Yep, yep.
I'll move, we recommend 4C as printed in the warrant, in the draft warrant.
I'll second.
So I have a question, Rich, up on the top there. Where to see if the town will vote to accept the provisions of chapter 44, section 53F, half of the Massachusetts general laws, to establish a wastewater enterprise fund. Oh, never mind, that's the state revolving fund. But that's not, okay, that's because of, never mind, effective July 1, 2025. You've got down below in the summary, the requirement of the state revolving fund, SRF, okay. Yeah, okay,
We got a motion from Peter and a second from Fred.
Peter has made a motion to approve Article 4C, adopt wastewater enterprise fund. Is there any,
Fred seconded.
you've seconded, Kate?
No, Fred
Fred.
did.
Oh, Fred,
I did.
okay, thanks.
It's your fault.
Any discussion on Article 4C? All in favor? I'm not gonna call everybody's names again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Finance Committee recommendation is 9-0 for Article 4C.
Okay, I'll move on to 4D, which is the eminent
Yes,
domain taking
Mhm.
of 2485 and 2825 State Highway, which are actually condo units. And I think you all understand this. We own the other half of, there are two buildings with 2 units. We own you own one of the units in each of the buildings, and this is taking the other one unit in each of the buildings. So we'll own the whole condo, both buildings, and the land, because then we will control the land. And that's needed for a wastewater pump station. It's an ideal location. It's also needed for stormwater mitigation. Right now, we have direct discharge into Salt Pond from Route 6, which we can't remediate on the east side because of a confluence of land ownership between the federal, state, and town, which is difficult. So this allows us on the west side to remediate that discharge problem. So that would be a future project. And it also, at the same time, accomplishes the fact that now we can actually fix up these buildings because we do use them for our housing program, but we can't maintain them because we have an uncooperative co-owner and we don't have a controlling interest. So we can keep, so now we'll be able to control the property, fix it up, maintain it in the short term. And long term, we feel like there's a lot of potential for redevelopment. It would be like an RFP process where we have a developer come in and build it out.
So what do you think our chances are, or what do we have to do to take it by eminent domain, given the way?
I think our
we wanna
chances
use it?
are amazing because we've got state law that allows us to do it for a public purpose.
Yeah.
And we got our attorneys on it, and we've got an appraisal ready to go, which has to be within 90 days of the vote, which it will be. And I think, don't quote me exactly, but I think the appraisals came in at 780, and I put down 850 to accommodate any contingency and any subsequent costs that might come with, perfecting the acquisition.
It was $1.1 million in the.
Yeah, it came down.
So. Is this
They're
time?
falling apart.
We talk about this. So I
Can you
assume
move it up
that,
a little bit?
any
Thanks.
liens that are on the property that, or maybe unpaid taxes or whatever would come off this number.
There are no liens at the moment. No tax liens. There likely are IRS liens.
Right.
Hmm.
So we'd have to get behind that, right?
No. Nope.
I think this property is owned by the Del Gizzi.
Eminent domain's
Yeah.
pretty solid taking.
Right.
You don't take it subject to that's their
But it-
personal liability.
Yeah, but the IRS doesn't have a lien on that property. They have a lien on that person, right?
Right.
But you're saying there's no IRS liens, so we don't.
Oh, there might be.
There might be,
but
I'm not
it's
sure,
not
but
gonna
it's not
affect-
relevant to the taking.
Right.
If we
Okay.
take it for a public purpose, they'll have to lien something else.
So the taxes were all paid up on that.
Yes.
Right.
Surprise,
Amazing.
paid the taxes on half the units, but not the other. I don't know how this happens,
I
but
think they came in at the last minute with,
Yeah.
No doubt.
no, I'm sorry, I was thinking of the lobster shanty. They came back in with the monies owed on that
To get-
because
get
they wanted to open up for the summer.
The fact that they're on two separate parcels doesn't present any particular problems. No. I had a question about the bar, it's the eminent domain transfer from available funds and or borrow the sum of 1.1 million. And if we end up borrowing, doesn't it have to be a 2/3 vote? Not just a simple majority?
yeah, well, we haven't written motions yet, but that's a great question, Peter. So this is going to be suggested as borrowing. I'm also going to put in the motion that it would be exempt debt, which means that it doesn't get added to our tax levy. But I'm not going, so that means it needs a ballot vote as well. But I'm not going to make that borrowing contingent on the ballot vote passing. So in other words, if it passes town meeting and not the ballot, we could still do it, but we'll have to figure out a different way to pay for it. And the other way to pay for it would likely be either free cash or short-term rental receipts. Or a combination.
But should it say 2/3 vote required at town meeting?
Yes.
Because we might borrow, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so, so I would move that we recommend this article. Oh, I got one other change, sorry. Minor, but in the summary, I thought it might be better if you've got Route 6 in the second paragraph of the summary. Route 6 is spelled out SIX at the first time, and then the second time it's just the number 6. Probably ought to just say the number 6 in both cases.
Okay.
And then, so I would move to recommend Article 4D as printed in the draft, except that it should say 2/3 vote required at the end,
Versus
majority.
majority.
Yeah.
So did you want, did you want it to say route the number 6 and for
think
both
the-
places versus
yeah,
the other
number 6, yeah.
option?
I think
There you go. Is that Wesleyan or education?
It's
coming
proper to
into
have the
play?
6, right?
There,
It's
okay.
Eastham, it's proper to do whatever you want.
Except during Lent. And we are in Lent.
Oh, geez. I don't know,
Okay.
anybody
Peter's got
second?
a motion, Mary?
Let me see, I had,
You need a second.
see,
Second.
Patty seconded, okay.
oh. So it's Peter.
Yep.
Peter.
Patty.
Mira's probably getting all this too.
Peter and
Yeah,
Patty.
Patty. Yeah, Mary keeps track of all this, as do I, so if you don't need to do it, if you don't want to.
I'm sorry?
Mary and myself keep track of all this, so you don't feel like you
The-
have to.
of the,
So I like to keep
All right.
that too.
okay.
You're very
Feel like
thorough.
these,
Mary.
sort of like
Yeah, I am
when you watch a
thorough.
baseball game, do you score at home?
No, I don't.
Oh, I see where the root is.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor for Article
Or do,
4D. And it has
Patty
to do with
seconded.
the acquisition of the two places on State Highway. Peter has made the motion, Patty has seconded it. There are at least one amendment amended with the Route 6 issue. And the majority vote is going to be 2/3 versus, it will be 2/3 versus the majority vote.
Right.
Okay, so I have Peter and Patty. Any further discussion on this article? All in favor of this article? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Finance Committee recommendation is 9-0. And I think I think it's good to have this, a map.
There
I
is.
don't believe
Absolutely.
the other earlier warrants had the
Oh.
maps in it, so I
Yours.
always think that when you're talking about land, even the CPA stuff and anything else, it's good to have the map.
Moving on to 4E.
13, 14.
So 4E are the other two units that we do own. Those were taken for non-payment of taxes under a tax title process. So legally, they belong under the custody of what's called a tax title custodian, which in our case is our town treasurer. They need to be under the, in order to do anything with them going forward, they'll need to be under the purview of the select board for general municipal purposes. And so it's simply transferring it from the tax title custodian to the select board, the control of these properties.
Jump through hoops.
an easy hoop though. And it's explained well in the summary, so I would move that we recommend Article 4E as printed in the draft warrant.
So Peter has made a motion on Article 4E, transfer of the two parcels on State Highway. Do I have a second for
I'll second,
Roy?
yes.
Any discussion? Should I wait until Fred comes back?
Sure, I'll ask a question to kill time.
Yeah,
So if we own both sides of the units, is the plan to keep, just renovate the buildings, to keep them as is or add on to? I know you mentioned maybe.
Definitely in the short term, we're just gonna keep them,
Just keep them
fix them up
as
as
is.
minimally as we need to. But they're large units, large buildings, and there's also other land.
there's quite a bit of
So
land.
I think it's ripe opportunity for some sort of redevelopment, but that's a longer
In the
term.
long, yeah.
And would they be rented out under affordable, or what would the requirements be for that?
Any program we determine. So it could be affordable, it could be workforce.
Because it's not
Right.
CPA money, yeah.
No, it's not CPA money, no.
Okay.
Okay, I am talking about Article 4. E. 4E, the transfer of the 2 parcels on State Highway. Do I have a motion? Oh,
Yep.
I have Peter and I have, Roy, and we're waiting for you to return. No, quite okay.
That's all I want.
I'll ask, why was it only 0?
That's right, that's right.
Maybe we should all get up and go.
He has a secret interest in the properties.
All in favor of 4E? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9-0. The Finance Committee recommendation is 9-0.
I'm moving on to 5A, Mary, which is the
5A, the seasonal.
seasonal
yeah.
communities designation acceptance. We have been designated by state law to be a seasonal community. I think they poorly crafted the language of that law, because other communities can join, but it's always been a local option. So it's been determined that even though we've been designated by law, that we still remains a local option, and we need to accept it as a town. So there's a lot of powerful tools in here for us, and likely at some point in the future, some grant funds available to us as being a seasonal community. So we're recommending acceptance.
It's my understanding that in order to be considered a seasonal community, you just need to have 35% of your houses, second homeowners.
In designated counties,
What does that mean?
Barnstable, Dukes, Nantucket, and Berkshire County.
Oh, so because we're in the Barnstable County?
Mhm.
Oh, does the whole county have to be 30?
No,
No,
the
I
town
think-
within the county.
Oh, I see. I see.
There are towns, Yarmouth is really upset because they're not at 35%.
So
So they
they
don't,
can't be considered a seasonal
no,
seasonal
but they can, there's
community.
a provision for them to apply and get acceptance. And if they get acceptance, then they can take a vote to opt in, but they're not automatically in.
Interesting. Okay.
What's the last item actually mean as far as allows an increase in the residential tax exemption?
Right now, the RTE is limited to 35%. This
50?
book bangs it up to 50.
Okay.
Is Provincetown at 50? I'm sorry.
No, we're doing it differently. The section is 5.
What was your question, Jerry?
Should it be just 5, not 5A?
Oh, is there a 5B? So it's just gotta be 5.
No, I think it's just a
Are you
stylistic
gonna
thing.
come up with a 5B?
No,
Category.
I think this section is section 5, and this is 5A because it's a specific article. That's how the executive office has done it. That's pulling the company line here.
Sounds good, sounds good.
Go ahead, make the motion. Pete.
I'll move, we recommend Article 5A as printed in this draft warrant.
And I will second that one. With the A.
Yeah, 5A.
Let me see,
I'm
that's,
sorry I raised
yeah,
that.
that's Peter and that's Kate, but, and I do have a question, and it has to do with the thing that we were just discussing. The last sentence in the summary allows an increase in the residential tax exemption limit. Is that up to,
50%.
should that be in there? Should that be noted?
No, we can if anybody wants it, but I don't put, I could have put a lot more detail in all those bullet points. I could just add, increase in resident tax exemption limit up to 50%
Yeah,
from 35.
well, that's just my opinion.
Or just, say currently, right? Because that could still change at any point, right?
So that's why maybe it's better to just leave it like it is.
Yeah, things can change, so I
Changes,
just,
right?
Right. And I'm with Patty on that, in that you put it up to 50% and people are going, wait, I thought it was only 12% now. And and then they get confused.
Unnecessary conversation, I think.
I don't know, I always think it's best to be transparent.
Yeah, because it's useful information to
Yeah,
have.
yeah, yeah.
I think somebody will ask the question. I don't
Yeah,
think,
but-
honestly.
You see, that's,
You know,
that,
unless we explain subject to change, but currently this, you know, you could
We-
go on. and on.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it is giving information.
Well, I think it's just confusing when it's, whole matter is up for discussion and on the table with the select board. And then that, then immediately people are gonna think, well, it's like a 50% RTE, and it's like, no,
Right.
no, no.
50 million people are gonna
It's-
show up.
They're not, never going to start at 50%.
Right. Right, and that's a lot.
So could you say up to? Or are you saying we should just leave it, are people thinking we should just leave it the way it is?
I'd suggest we leave it. And if anyone asks a question, we can bring it up at the pre-town meeting as well. And I'm sure everybody in the Facebook land, once the warrant is finalized, will be commenting on it. We can answer the question there.
They already are.
So I wouldn't change it personally.
I have a motion on the table from Peter, seconded by Kate on Article what is it, 5A?
5A. 5A.
5A. Is there any further discussion on Article 5A? All in favor of Article 5A? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 0. Finance Committee recommendation is 9-0.
I'm gonna skip 6A,
6A.
as discussed, and move over to zoning at 7A. And if you have any questions, I don't know the answer.
Yeah. Should we skip the zoning for now?
Yes, please.
Because I think everybody needs to have a chance to read it if they haven't. I mean, I've been going to all their meetings, but
And
Well, they
nothing's
came,
gonna-
they came in here and
That's right.
did a presentation,
yeah.
Yeah, and I saw him at the select board meeting again this.
and we've had it to read. I don't know what, we're not gonna know any more next week than we do now.
Oh, I wasn't from that perspective. I was just saying if everybody had a chance to read what was in there versus listening to a discussion, but it's up to everybody.
Make a motion, Peter.
Reading it just makes it more confusing.
I'll,
Let's unpack it.
Are you going for it?
I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna move.
A and B at the same time?
What's B?
7A,
What's B?
6B.
B is the ADU bylaw.
Where are we now?
7A.
7A.
Doing,
7A.
Peter was gonna make a joint motion, so
There is no 6B, Peter.
no, there's a 7B though, what you're saying. Well, let's just do. So I'll move that we recommend 7A as printed in this draft warrant.
Was that great?
6A.
So.
7A.
No, I'm just talking to myself. I'm sorry. Let me see, we're skipping 6A and we're going to,
Because it's not final yet.
right, and we're going to 7A. We're
Yeah.
going to 7A. Okay,
Yeah, right, that's the one that's not final yet.
okay. No, it's in the back. Okay.
I just really have a statement on this. Because at town meeting or pre-town meeting, I know people are, I thought you made a great point, Rich, I think was it last week when you said this is the opportunity for Eastham to make money off of property they own rather, a lot of people think it costs us a lot of money to keep, to buy real estate and own real estate. But you made a great point. You're like, this isn't costing us anything. These are just zoning changes.
it's economic development
And it
opportunity.
gives us the opportunity to make money. I think that's just, I thought you made a really great point.
I thought your example didn't hold water though,
What was my
about
example?
the Purcell property. That now we collect tax on it, but before we didn't because we just owned it. But we also probably have a lot of elementary school expenses from kids coming out of that property and other. So you look at the revenue side, but there's also expenses.
Yep.
So hopefully,
Well, Wellfleet and Orleans have some big projects coming online, so.
hopefully these projects will, or these parcels will generate some income.
So we have Peter and Patty as a
I
second, Mary.
second.
7A.
Peter and Patty, 7A.
Yep.
7A is the Eastham Corridor Special District. I just have a question on, underneath the, before the summary, it says over on, at least in mine, over on the right-hand side all by itself is, or take any action relative there?
Just an edit. It's got to be up at the body of the article.
Yeah, that's what that's what I would assume. Any further discussion on Article 7A, Eastham Corridor Special District? All in favor of Article 7A? Everybody, 9-0. And again, I'm glad you put in the maps here, because I think that's very helpful for people.
7A was
20.
7A was 2/3. Yeah.
Let's see.
You probably don't know much about going into any questions on 7B either.
No.
The only 7B, most of the changes are to make changes to our zoning to match the new.
State
State
law,
law.
right, exactly.
Yeah, just some different definitions and stuff, because Eastham passed an ADU zoning just a few years ago. And we just have to update it. This is an update to make it match the new state law.
And didn't they change the size or something? The
900,
They changed the size.
900 square feet.
They changed some definitions.
But
That's mentioned in the summary,
It's in there, they're the 900.
summary too.
But I'm still unclear if I put an ADU on my land and I decided to move into it because I wanted to move into a smaller piece of property because I'm downsizing, I can rent out my main residence as a short-term rental.
That's a good question.
And that's what I understood from the meeting the other night.
I think you're probably right, but I'm not sure. The ADU has to have
I
a
think she's correct.
full-time resident.
The ADU has to have the right, exactly.
ADU has to have a
short-
full-time resident.
The
Or
rep-
10
res-
months.
10 months.
10 months.
Mhm.
the
That's.
primary residence,
State, because it's
State,
that's
10
state.
months.
rule.
the primary residence is always available for short-term rental, as long as you don't have more than 3 or whatever
So
the
yes, you
rules.
could, I think you're right. You could do that, but
Do you
you
think?
have to have someone living
Yeah,
10
yeah, I
months
think
in
so.
the
I
ADU.
think there's-
In the
At least-
ADU,
At least 10.
yeah.
You make a note to change the summary to italics.
Already did.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
Because I'm thinking that what we're trying to do with ADUs is to get more people living here full-time. And if I just move from my big house to my little house, and I was living here full-time before, now I'm living in a little house full-time before, and now I can rent out my big house, make a lot of money in short-term rental.
Yeah, I think another thought though, Mary, was to increase the number of residential units as well. So an ADU increase,
Becomes a residential unit.
right,
But-
and your main house is still a residential unit, even though you're renting it out short term.
And it's also just
Added one.
it's also just a short-term thing because, none of us are going to live in our ADU or our house forever. And the ADU will still have the year-round restrictions. So after,
So you've created.
all of our
Look,
demise,
yeah, if you
we created a
decided
new
then
year.
to sell the house, after you've been living in the ADU and you're gonna do something, you sell it, the ADU still has the restriction.
Mhm.
for
Of-
year
of-
round
of
for 10 months.
full-time.
10 months.
At least 10
months.
months,
Mhm.
yeah. So that.
So you have created a
I've
restricted
created a unit with restrictions. I've
Mhm.
created a residential unit with full-time.
Full-time residential
restrictions,
restriction.
which I didn't have before you put up the ADU.
Yeah.
I'll move that we recommend 7B as printed.
I'll second.
Could I ask a question, Mary?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, please do, Roy.
If you do that, if you have an ADU and move into the ADU, what's the restrictions on renting your original property?
That's what Mary was just asking. And I think the answer is you could rent your original property. So for some period of time, you have, no gain, but over time you have added the unit, the ADU unit that does have the restriction for year-round rental. So upon someone's passing or a transfer of sale, any number of reasons why in the future, that unit will be restricted.
God.
So
Did
there's
that
no-
answer? Oh, sorry.
I just, if you move into your ADU, don't you have to rent your original property for a specific period?
I
A
don't
year?
think so. Nope.
As long as you live.
I think they're considered separate units for planning or zoning purposes, and they each have their own nature.
I was wondering if you were trying to steal it.
I can confirm this with Paul Lag if anyone wants to, and you can take this up
Yeah,
next
but you face
week.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
But you could move out of your unit today, couldn't you?
I'm-
And you could move to, get a condo in Florida, move there, short-term rent your main building.
But your ADU has to be
Your ADU, yeah,
occupied
right,
10
right,
months
so
out of the year. That's
so
the
you
whole,
pro-
that's to protect
Right.
the whole summertime rental, making a quick buck. I
Well,
think.
you could make a bigger buck by renting out your bigger house for short-term rental.
I get it. And it's.
Yeah,
a
but you
good
built an
question.
ADU, which
But
is
you built a
restricted. You got the
year-round-
unit.
built a
That's the
year-round
key.
Unit.
Yeah.
So for
Well-
those of us that want to downsize, what we can do is build an ADU, move into our little ADUs and have our taxes paid by.
By the short-term rental in our big house.
Right.
I don't see why that would be, people would have a problem with that, but honestly, so. I think that'd be a selling point of this.
I don't have a problem with it as far as from a financial standpoint. I'm looking at it from a housing standpoint and what we're trying to accomplish in town.
The intention of the ADU.
Yeah.
Well, we accomplished a restricted unit that some point in the future will be freed up.
Yeah, that's true.
It's zoning, not financing or housing acquisition. Well, I got some conflicting information. It's got a text that says it can't be another unit. I was just texting Paul in the middle of this. Why don't we just table this till next week,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask to table it.
and then we'll,
So we're down, let me see, that was 7B. Now we're up to,
Yeah, right.
8A.
Community preservation.
7B. 7B. 5.5. 5.5.
Um,
5.5. That brings us up to 8, right?
yeah.
Community preservation.
Yeah, yeah.
The CPA, I see the votes are marked.
so 8A is the reservations of fund balance. I know we've had some questions on some of this. The legal opinion we have, which rings very true to me, it's what I had suggested when question came up, is if we vote more than the minimum, which is the case here for the reserve for community housing, is the CPC is voted to recommend 30%. That's in lieu of sending it to the housing trust and losing control of it. But they're recommending more than the minimum. If a subsequent CPC or town meeting wants to take that excess 20% and use it for something else, they can, as long as we've met the minimum, which is 10%.
And that would have to be voted on at town meeting.
Town meeting.
But the committee voted in their 5-year plan because of the housing crisis to make the reserve for housing from the required 10% to the 30%, which is what gives you the 379,850 figure on here versus the 126, which is the other 3 categories at 10%.
I think the reason, Jackie, through Paul and Stacy, I think, had advocated for this. I think we thought that it sent a positive message to the community that we're prioritizing this. And Mary had some numbers at a recent meeting that basically this puts the reserve for housing at a similar status as to the other purposes. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So you're not, still even at this point with this extra 20%, not overly weighted on the housing reservations.
Reservation.
That probably wasn't a good word,
Reserves.
combination of words, but
I mean, like current balances?
yes.
So the requirement is, Massachusetts state law requires 10%, which we have here for open space, historic preservation, and active recreation. As you can see, those three numbers are the same.
Not active, point of order. State law doesn't require it for active. That was
That's
something
correct.
Eastham decided to
That's
do.
correct.
But that's important because what Rich just said about being able to claw back the extra that you put into housing, that means that the amount in the recreation reserve can also be taken out by town meeting and used for.
No, because they've only ever had 10% put in.
But it's not statutory.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. Recreation reserve, right.
And as a matter of fact, the recreation reserve now has in it $346,000. So it's almost, I just wonder about this, putting the extra funds into these reserve accounts as opposed to just putting the minimum, the statutory requirement, 10% into the 3, and then putting the balance into the unrestricted, and it's still there.
Based on that legal opinion, fundamentally, you're right. There's no reason to do any of it, right?
Yeah.
But I would say then why bother even doing anything for recreation? Because it's not required, right? So do you have the same position for voting money into recreation?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
But I would submit that, again, it comes back to what is the message? That's, I think, kind of the impetus behind this. We're trying to, we do the money for, we do the recreation because we think it's important. We know we will have recreation projects coming up, whether it's a playground or Wiley Park. And we want to have the money kind of earmarked for it. And I guess it's kind of the same for housing.
Yeah.
The other thing is that when the CPA committee voted to pay for the tennis courts up at the high school, I think the cost was $366,000. So it only took one project and the entire amount was used. So although Peter says that there's right now, recreation reserve is 346,000.
And with this 10% this year, it
It'd be
would
460.
yeah. And then there is an article in here to spend 55, the total of the 2 recreational ones,
Right.
but there still leaves a balance of 400,000 in there. And yeah, maybe we'll get recreation projects, but maybe we won't. Wouldn't it be?
I think if we don't, and we had a big project come up in one of the other things, and it was important to all of us, we'd go to CPC, ask for them to support taking any excess appropriations out of unneeded reservations and use that money to get the other project.
So it can be moved around. It's not, once it's in there, it's.
Right.
If it's in excess of the minimum.
Of the required.
Right. I just am looking at the vote from the committee, and it's very clear to me that they're pretty passionate about this. And they're the ones that have sat in the meetings, and with Jackie's prioritizing messaging, I'm sort of leaning towards voting for it.
Somebody other than Peter's gonna have to make a motion this time.
No, I'm going to make well, I should probably, I'm chair of the Community
I can make,
Preservation
I can
Committee.
make, yeah, I can make, I can make the motion.
I'll make the motion, I'll second.
You're
No,
also
I'm just
chair
kidding.
here, so.
Well, co-chair.
I make a motion that we accept Article 8A
A.
as presented.
8A, yeah.
Yep.
Do I have a second to,
A second.
that's Kate and Patty. Is there any further discussion on Article 8A? All in favor of 8A? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
I'm gonna vote no.
You're gonna vote no?
No, yeah.
8, 0, 8, 1, 0,
Mhm.
8, 1, 0,
The rest of them is one group.
Okay, moving on.
8B.
Perhaps, unless there's any question, just to move things along, it's getting late and we have a letter to review, but it's up to
Yeah.
the committee. Well,
Why don't we keep the rest of the CPA things?
I was going to suggest, unless there's any question, would anybody like to make a motion to adopt 8B through 8?
I got questions.
Yeah, I have.
No
yeah,
questions?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I
So
think
maybe we
It's just
should
be
table
B.
until
Yeah, yeah,
next
yeah,
time,
yeah,
right? Because
yeah.
we've got the
I think
letter
question
to look
table.
at. And
Then,
it is- looking at the time, whoa.
And since we've discussed 7B, if you want to go back to that just for a second, I've confirmed from 2 reliable sources that yes, you can move into the ADU and rent your house short-term. Only one needs to be year-round.
That's what I thought.
Okay.
So if you'd like to take a vote on that, we could do that one.
I think we were happy with the wording and everything, so I'll move that we vote to recommend 7B as printed. in the
Patty, you
draft.
seconded it, right? 7B, I don't know.
Was it
Someone
7B?
did. So long ago, I don't remember.
Yeah, Patty, actually, we should have reversed these motions, but we didn't. So we had a motion from Peter and second from Patty originally
Oh,
on
okay.
7B, so we probably ought to keep that and take a
Let
vote
me
on those.
find the end of
You're
7B.
stuck with it.
Is, well, that's 8.
Getting a lot done. actually.
Okay, so, okay, oops. So we're on, Article 7B, that's on the ADU. Let me see, who is making, would somebody like to make a motion to approve?
We have,
We
we already have Peter
Oh, did I
Patty.
write it down?
on the table.
Let me see what
Please.
just a minute. Seven B, did I write it down?
It's on page 27.
That's what I'm looking at, and I don't see that I wrote anything down.
Well, I wrote it down, Mary. I got it.
I'm sorry, what is 7, what did we have for 7?
Peter made a motion to recommend and Patty seconded.
Okay. Okay, any further discussion on, Article 7B? It has to do with the ADU. All in favor of Article 7B? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9, 0. Finance Committee is 9-0 for 7B. And that's a 2/3 vote, right?
At town meeting, right?
Yes.
Zoning, yep.
And
Okay.
so we're holding on the rest of the CPA.
So,
Are we going to address 2A, Mary, or are we saving that for next week?
I'd save that for next time, because I would like to just do the minutes quickly, and I'd like to look at the letter that Paul put together.
Saving 9A.
Oh, right, 9A.
Would it be important to talk about 9A as far as support for
Yeah.
the select meeting on Monday?
Yeah, well,
Yeah, that's a good thought,
Good
Steve.
point.
right, 9A is citizens petition.
This is for you, Jerry.
You kind of all get the gist of what it's about. We haven't written the summary yet. That's in the works. Be for the select board meeting on Monday, but I don't know that you need the summary. It's basically going to say that you think if there's some misinformation in here and it's misleading, and we've got a great staff that does what we need them to do, and we have the information available to us to make this decision, and the law allows us to make this decision, and we do not recommend.
And I agree with Rich.
Say also, it's really a delaying tactic to kick the can down the road in the RTE and et cetera, or is that something we?
No, I don't know if we need to put any sticks in anybody's eyes maybe, but no, it's- we can say it when they ask us questions. maybe.
I'm going to make a motion to for 9A. To approve.
Right, so the motion has to always be a positive motion, so
Right.
Actually,
Mary's
to
motion is
approve.
to
I'm
recommend.
making a motion to approve.
To
So
recommend.
a yes vote
Right,
would
right,
be to
right,
approve
right,
it, a
right.
no vote would be not to.
Right, right. So do I have a second to approve Article 9A?
So you need a second,
No.
right?
Ron, are you second?
Got it seconded, right?
Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay.
You have to say-
Any further discussion on Article 9A? All in favor of Article 9A? All opposed to Article 9A? So that would be 0, 9, 1, no, 9, 0, 0, 9, 0, right?
Yep.
0, 9, 0.
Remember, we had one of those.
Fertilizer got full.
Yes.
0, 9, 0.
Done this at the beginning when people weren't fired.
I can't even remember.
Both the wrong way.
We've had a little bit of fun with it.
I was the only one that voted against it.
But what was that?
I don't know.
Oh, I'm the one on this one.
And we can't vote on the RTE.
I'm sorry?
We can't vote on the RTE.
No, you can't vote on that, no.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
minutes.
All right, guys. You did a
Um,
good job. Yeah.
Yes, yes,
on
yeah,
Monday.
have to do the minutes,
Yeah.
the minutes.
Then that.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Too much.
Make it up there.
Did you, I've been busy with all sorts of things
I
today.
did send them over. Patty did had some recommendations and I did some changes, so
Okay, because I sent you some changes too,
I haven't received those.
or earlier this morning.
Give yourself a tax cut.
I have to look, sorry.
Okay.
Can we maybe table the minutes
Yeah,
then
I think
until
we
next
better,
meeting? Can we table
We'll
them?
ta- we'll table the minutes.
Have time.
Sounds good.
Yeah, and that,
Okay, we'll table the minutes,
okay. And just
table,
that way we can go through the letter.
okay.
Well, Mary, if I can make a suggestion on the
Yeah,
letter,
Yeah.
it's getting late. One option is to do what we did last year, which is if everybody wants to go through the letter on their own and send me stuff they want changed. If you could do that by Sunday, I'll get it out. I'll get the revised letter out. I'll show you the red line stuff and show you what the clean version could be. And we could do it next week. It might save some time. If you want to do it now, it's fine with me.
Mhm. What are people's thoughts? It is almost 7 o'clock. We've been here for 3 hours.
Can we?
I think we'll have
I-
time next week because we're in
Yeah,
good shape,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
we're in really good shape.
And I know that as Paul described, we did do exactly as he outlined. So everybody, what we're saying is everybody would go through the letter that we have right now.
Yep.
Make some comments, what have you, send them
Send them to
to
me and I'll fold everybody's comments in.
Yeah.
I'll give you two versions. One will be redlined, which will show all the changes. And the one on top of that would be what the revised letter looks like with everybody's changes.
And
Okay.
Paul, would it be helpful if we have no changes to let you know we have no changes and that way you hear from everyone?
Oh, Kate, you're a wonderful human being. Yes, that would be great.
Okay.
And I just want everybody to know that they are to send them directly to Paul. Please don't send them to everybody on the committee. It's just between you and Paul.
Yep. And if you want to call me,
It drives me crazy.
Sorry, what, Paul?
if they want to call me, if it's easier to call, give me a call.
Oh, yeah.
If you don't have my number, it's 617-510-5557.
5557.
Yep,
Say that again, Paul.
617-510.
510-5557, and it's Paul B. Brown@gmail.com. No, two B's together, no periods, no nothing.
Yeah, I think everybody has your email.
Oh, you're probably gonna get a lot of fan mail calls.
Well, speaking of fan mails, Rich is being modest. He worked really hard on the letter as well. So I'm going to blame Rich for anything you guys don't like.
Okay.
Okay, so we will do the minutes next time. We'll give the information to Paul on the letter. Thank you very much for putting what you have put together for us. I just want, I won't go through the other stuff on here. We've discussed it. I do not have a town manager report, so I have nothing on that to discuss. Is there anything on there? Have you heard, I know you had the appeal with the wastewater?
Yep, nothing further.
Nothing further, okay. We do have on this that our next meeting is March 27th, which is next Thursday, which we've just discussed, but I want to make sure everybody's aware that we have a joint meeting next Monday, the 24th, here at 5:30 with the select board. So that's before our meeting on Thursday.
And I'd just offer up, if anybody has any questions on the remaining CPA or the operating budget, you can call me or email me. That might facilitate moving the meeting along if you, something you just want to clarify, so. Next week is a 30-minute meeting if we can help it.
Next week is a what meeting?
30-minute meeting.
Love it.
From your lips to God's ears.
And Patty is the designated driver and I can take over since I don't drink if you all want to bring champagne.
I don't think we can have alcohol in the building here, but it sounds like a good idea.
Think something.
One more motion. I move
Okay, we have one more motion and that motion I'm sure everybody wants to do. It's the, need a motion to adjourn.
move to
Patty,
adjourn.
I mean, Kate.
No, Peter.
Oh, Peter? Oh, I don't want to get this confused here.
Oh, yeah.
Motion.
Peter's
Peter's fault.
yeah, okay, so Peter is making a motion to adjourn. And
Ron seconded.
Ron is our second person.
He's closest to the
And,
door.
and I know there's no. He's got his hat on and he's ready to go.
One foot out.
Plug the laptop
Okay,
out of here.
all in favor of adjourning?
Yes.
9-0. Thank you to the Zoomers. Thank you to Mira for taking care of all this.
And Mira,